Excel a little bit more. You can always push it a little further. You can always climb a little bit higher. You can always better your best. You can always go beyond anything that you have ever done. And so all you're looking for are new breakthroughs. So practice, you'll get better and better. And when you know what you want, you will do anything it takes to get it. You will do whatever it takes. You hear me? You'll do all the way you need to attain that too. You can be smart. From the smiling coast we rise, speaking truth beneath the skies. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every dream, every single word. Building bridges, breaking walls, answering our nation's calls. Together we inspire change, lighting hope across the flames. Raise your voice, let freedom ring. Let the future hear us sing. Facts and wisdom lead the way. HIRI media starts today. HIRI media, keep the hope, stand strong for one another. Truth and justice side by side. For the Gambia with hope and pride. HIRI media, shining bright, giving every voice. From the villages to the town, every hand can lift us up now. Youth and elders side by side, moving forward without pride. Faith with respect and dignity, building peace through unity. Knowledge is the path we choose. Together there is none to lose. No silence anymore. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to HIRI Media. Yet another amazing Saturday it is. From my end, it's exactly 10:05. This program was supposed to start at 5 p.m. Gambian time, but due to some circumstances, that is going to coincide with the HIRI prayers in the Gambia, and some of our panelists are going to be praying their HIRI prayers, and then they would pray for us and come and join us here. Welcome, UDB online Bandaba. That is Saidily. One of our panelists already in the house. Welcome our viewers from the Gambia and around the world. We have a very interesting topic tonight to discuss and focus on Gambia's trade, specifically imports and exports and the water here. And we really honor all our followers, our viewers, panelists, and those who support HIRI Media, fans of HIRI Media. We do things a little differently. We like to focus on discussing issue-based policies and programs, and things that really academically can add some value to our discourse, add some value to our knowledge base, our knowledge bank, to understand exactly how we can improve our country, how we can build our country based on the actual policies. So HIRI Media is a little different. When we bring our guests over here, we like to put them on the spot, ask them based on their expertise and their knowledge. And we also invite politicians to discuss their policies and programs that they have for the Gambian people. But tonight, we have very important people. We have experts, educated experts, academicians, people that we all know on this platform, on TikTok. Of course, some of you might not know their qualifications and their specificities, but they will be here to discuss a very important topic that they have a very strong foundation and background knowledge on. And I urge all of you to come and join so we can share this knowledge together. We can discuss on the importance and the issue. Today, we would like to know how much is the Gambia importing? You know, what exactly are we importing in our country? And we want to look back and compare from, about 3 to 4 years ago compared to now, let's say 2024, figures compared to 2025 figures. How much did the Gambia import? And also how much did the Gambia export? And how is the trade like? The general overview of our economy.
this conversation, this program tonight might be the language of instruction might be English, and we might be discussing. And I'm sorry for those who might have problems understanding exactly what we do, because this is knowledge based. Our panelists are welcome to answer questions in Mandinka or other local languages to explain things if they do want to do, if they wish to explain themselves in local languages, that would be awesome. But we have our questions and everything scripted in English language. But of course, we have Saidily here, so maybe our Mandinka viewers will have the opportunity to hear him break some things down a little more for the person who might not understand very well the English language in terms of economic policies. But I think it is fair enough to allow these people to kind of use the language of instruction, to use the English language to be able to give the figures right, so they can express themselves professionally. And Mr. Njie is another panelist, and he's going to be joining us from the Gambia. Njie is well known on this platform for his astuteness in Gambia's economy, world economy. He's an economist by profession, by trade, by career. He definitely, everybody knows how outspoken he is and well informed he is about Gambia's economy, about Gambia's trade, imports and exports, what we should do, what is the deficit. These are very important things because, people need to know, especially those in the diaspora, what is being imported into the Gambia. And if they want to go into trade, if they want to engage into trade in the Gambia, what is being exported, what kind of trade can they do? How is the Gambian economy looking like? A kind of overview. I think this program is going to benefit all Gambians, but more so Gambians who are, especially in the diaspora, those who are thinking about investing in the Gambia, those who are looking at, for example, the real estate market, which I think was booming in the Gambia, right? But there may be other things that we don't know, business-wise, that we can invest in and make a difference. That is why at HIRI Media we thought it's necessary to bring these people up here, to have these conversations with them and discuss with them. My co-host is going to be no other but Mike HIRI. He's going to be joining us shortly as well. And Mike, I'll tell you guys, he's well prepared for this program. He I was just talking to him, he read very well, and he want to hold Mr. Lee, Mr. Saidily, and and I'm going to expand them out here so we can see when they speak, Mr. Saidily and Mr. Nyang. We're going to hold them accountable, guys, by asking them questions, issue-based questions, data-driven questions, evidence-based questions, to explain, to answer that person's question who is thinking about investing in the Gambia. Is the Gambia ready for diaspora investment? Is the Gambia open up for diaspora investment? What are the opportunities for the diaspora in the Gambia? Is the Gambia doing well with its exportations? What are the opportunities? What are the chances of expanding the Gambia port? How does the Senegalese port and and other regional issues affect importation and exportation in the Gambia, and how are we doing as a country since 2024 to 2025, the data that we have exactly. And I have something that I researched out here, and I'm going to try to read this out to the people, and then we will be able to get at least an overview, a background overview. We always have a HIRI blueprint that we always create for almost every program that we have, and you can see that there's always a blueprint. So we use the blueprint to guide us so that we are using, especially in programs like this, so we can have accurate data, that we're going to challenge these people. And then they would look at that data and tell us exactly, because we are not experts in economics. So we wanted to bring somebody who is an expert in the economy. And I think Nyang and Saidily will do us justice to explain these things, right? So, which is so important. The purpose of this program is to examine what the Gambia imports and exports, why the country's trade deficits remains exceptionally large. And our programs are a little more academic in nature. And that is why sometimes we try to make sure we base it on facts. So if you look at the data snapshot, according to the government of the Gambia, 2025, they reported to the World Trade Organization with regards to merchandise trade exchange as follows. Like imports in 2024 was 67.98 billion. In 2024, the Gambia paid or spent 67.98 billion, right? That was in 2024. But in 2021, that figure was 51.35 billion. So our imports increased by 32.4%, in 2024, between 2023 and 2024. While our domestic export in 2023, we gained about 864.9 million, right? And then in 2024, our domestic exports were 1.57 billion. So there is an increase of up to 82%, right? Okay, we want to look at the re-export as well. Re-export, and Mr. Njie and of course, Mr. Saidily will tell us more about the re-exports. Please welcome my co-host, my uncles in the house. We're going to try to change the settings out here a little bit. But I just wanted to tell you that, the figures that I'm trying to mention here mean that exports covered only about 5% of the value of imports in 2024. And there is a merchandise deficit, which is approximately 64 billion. And this is according to the Gambia government's report to the World Trade Organization. So we also want to look at what do we import and what do we export. Because what we import has an influence. What we're importing in our country can tell you where the country is going. Like if we see that the country is importing a lot of machines, for production, a lot of industrial equipment, then we could say, okay, the country is developing at this level. Like I said, I've learned from, one of my mentors growing up in terms of economies and our economy and civic education, Khalifa Salah. He said that a country develops in three phases, and this is if anybody who listens to Khalifa's speeches will hear him say this often, that we have a primary stage of development where we produce our raw materials, right? And these raw materials is what we use. Hello, everyone. Boubacar, welcome to the house. Lady Cisse, welcome to the house. Nurse Nugget in the house. Everyone else, welcome. So then we have secondary development where we take those raw materials and we turn them into finished products, right? We reproduce those raw materials. And then you take your groundnut, you turn it into a finished product that you can sell. So if we're only producing raw materials and then we're exporting those raw materials out of the country, we are stuck at the primary development stage. And that means other people from outside takes those raw materials and they turn them into finished products and sell them back to our people. Then we have the HIRI development where we produce the equipment itself, the machines that we need to kind of turn these raw materials, to be able to take these raw materials and turn them into finished products. So we definitely have a very interesting topic to discuss. My co-host is here, Mike Bunkers. Mike, welcome to the house. And what do you think about today's discussion?
Right. Good evening, HIRI, and good evening to Saidily of Online Bantaba. So I'm enjoying very soon. Right. It's going to be an interesting one because everything revolves around the economy. And virtually, if you look at the different party manifestos, they all talk about economy in a different way. But all circles back to one thing, is how to improve cost of living, how to improve the economy, how to restructure it, particularly which is absent. And I want to hear more of that going forward. How do we restructure the Ghanaian economy? How do we tap into what we have and turn it into something? Particularly if you look at it, our microeconomic overviews, where we are with exports and where we are with other things, our dependence on certain things, So I think it's going to be an interesting one. Overall, Gambia is not performing very badly, but if you look at where we are, we could do more or we could do better. But it does require a radical thinking. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion since we have two brilliant economists here. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, so Mike, I know you did a lot of research just to find out exactly how much we import and export in the state of our economy. Based on your own research, before we bring in our guests here to give their opinion, based on what you found out, what would you say is the state of our economy? I was one time flying, and then luckily I was in the same flight with one guy who was he's the head of one of our biggest economic institutions in the Gambia. So when I get to meet him on the flight and he introduced himself, and the first thing I asked him was, "What is the state of our economy?" Of course, the answer wasn't obvious. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Njie in the house as well, joining us from the Gambia. So, Mike, what would you say before I bring our panelists real quick to introduce themselves? And we're going to turn our cameras on tonight. We're going to look at the Gambian people in their eyes and talk to them about the state of their economy, because we want people to know what's happening. Hold on, I'll put the big guys on the big screen. Mike, quickly tell us what you think is the state of our economy. Are you there, Mike?
I didn't realize I was muted. Let me just give you some summary. I mean, if you look at the Gambia's economy between 22 to 26 in the last 4 years, I don't think we are doing very bad, because the economy has demonstrated some sort of resilience in the last 4 years, supported by tourism recovery, agriculture, construction, remittances, donor-backed infrastructure investment. So in real time, we are one of the strongest percent, 25 to 6% average. So the problem is those the average Gambian notices is another thing. Despite the persistent inflation and physical pressures or external vulnerabilities like our exposure to foreign currency and many other things, I think overall you could say we are doing a bit okay, but we are not excellent. So I think in terms of if we are talking to policymakers and we ask them basically as a policymaker, what do you think our economy needs in terms of if we are doing restructuring? I would argue many will say our key challenges probably is to do with growth, but isn't not necessarily growth, but the quality of that growth and the sustainability of that growth. So I'm looking forward, hopefully, Saihou and Mr. Njie will be able to delve into this in more detail as to where we are as a country and where we need to be. Because I want to think we need to restructure quickly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike Bunkers.
All right,
always coming in and adding, and get ready for your questions. There is no need for introduction, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go straight to the point. Mr. Njie, thank you for joining us. Our imports reached nearly 68 billion in 2024, while our total exports were only about 3.4 billion. What does this imbalance tell us about the structure of the Gambian economy?
Thank you so much. But before I delve into your question, I must say that Mike must have been reading a redaction from the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee. Everything Mike said is rosy, but what's rosy in economics must be anchored on sound fundamentals. And everything he said that's growing, if you come to the real sense of it, i.e. tourism, he said tourism is growing again. Look at our airport arrivals. That's a good indicator. look at the beds in the hotels, rate of occupancy. That should tell you whether growth is taking place or not. But listening to Mike, I was just hearing, the outcome of MPC meetings about the state of the Gambian economy. Now, before I get to your question, we must first understand the premise that anchors the Gambian economy. The Gambian economy pre-independence was a mercantile economy. A mercantile economy is an economy that trades. So the British, they had many companies, British West Africa, Morocco, well, not Morocco wasn't British, but it was here. The CFAOs, I forgot the other name of the big company, but these companies were the trading companies or the trading houses in the Gambia. And the banking sector similarly follows what the trading companies needed, meaning they needed short-term financing for imports. So basically, that's what the Gambian economy has been all about, and not much change post-independence. Then the next question we need to ask ourselves, when the colonialists were here, their interest was an extractionary economy, meaning grow your groundnuts for me, grow cotton, I ship it, make money, bring back my goods, you buy them, and that's it. So that will never grow an economy. And unfortunately, what was happening during colonialism was never disrupted. So we continued exactly the model that was put in place by the colonialists. At some point, tourism was added to the mix, and the service sector in the 70s, 80s grew, but the service sector was mostly insurance and others. Now the economy has become a little bit more sophisticated, but yet still, the fundamentals that anchored the Gambia economy to date is still in a way or in a manner in which the extraction out of Gambia, into Gambia now by way of imports is more than our production out of Gambia by way of exports. So we've been having a trade imbalance for quite a while, and this trade imbalance happens to have structural problems, i.e. the value chain, i.e. marketing, external marketing, especially with groundnuts in the early 2000s to date. And we haven't addressed those issues, and up to now, the Gambian economy suffers from structural imbalances that leads to trade imbalances. Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Saidily, I just want to bring you in. How can you explain this trade imbalance to an ordinary Gambian without creating the misleading impression that the country must stop importing altogether?
Good evening. Thank you, HIRI and Mike. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you. Oh, yes, I am. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah, good evening, HIRI and Mike. Thank you for being here again, once again. And I have a pleasure to be here with a very good brother of mine, Mr. Njie. I listened to him, and when he referenced whether Mike read from the NPC report, Monetary Policy Unit of the Central Bank, whenever you read their reports, and even generally from the Ministry of Finance, you tend to believe that Gambia is doing tremendously well. And even the economic growth that they normally put, sometimes I wonder if our economy is growing at such a rate, then how come we're having all these challenges and constraints in the country? How come there's so much, the unemployment rate is so high? If the economy is growing naturally, every basic economist will know that once an economy grows, definitely create jobs. Okay, but we are not able to create jobs in the country. But whenever you hear the reports from the authorities, there's always a mismatch between the reality and what is on paper. So, but just to ask you a question in terms of a trade imbalance, Gambia has been always been relying pretty much on re-export trade. We don't export much. Your reference here, there's so much, the gap between what we import, like you referencing 2024 figures, but if you go down the latest time, it's about $1.5 billion in terms of what we import compared to about $206 million. So the variance is big. And that is pretty much because we haven't created the base unit where we'll export and trade more with the rest of the world. We've always, from independence today, we've always been an importing nation. When I was working at the Ministry of Trade, we used to have the monetary, the weekly reports and the trade data. And obviously, the trade imbalance has grown because in order to mitigate that gap, obviously, we have to try and create more value-added industries, and so that we're able to export and create value-added products to trade war. But we will go to the structural bottlenecks, because when it comes to our exports and be able to even reach particularly the Western markets, there's so many challenges for us, okay? We will delve into that when you go to the SPS issues, sanitary and phytosanitary issues, challenges, and even though people may not be aware of this, Europeans have given us what under the GTLS, Generalized Trade Services Preferences, and most MFN rates in terms of tariffs, like we're able to export to UK and others, giving us very good tariff rates, but we are not able to penetrate those markets because we are not able to produce quality goods to meet the European requirements. And those are the things that they call SPS constraints that we have that I just referenced. So the trade imbalance has always been there, guys, and it's not looking good because we have been pretty much relying on re-export trade. Our country has ever re-export trade. And I remember, maybe we will go into this, when I was at the ministry, we used to have a lot of problem with Senegal, okay? You remember when Njie was there, you used to close the border, and the border issues. We had a lot of high-level meetings in Senegal. One time we were there with Edward Singate. He led our delegation. We went to meet with the Senegalese officials, our custom officials, Senegal officials, just about this border closure. It's because when you go into the WTO rules, the World Trade Organization, the goods that we export to Senegal, Mali, and others don't meet the minimum local content requirement. Okay, for you to be able to export certain goods to Senegal without affecting their industries, those goods have to be pretty much the minimum threshold of, even within ECOWAS, like 60% local content. But we don't have that. We don't have this. We don't meet the 60% local content. What do we do? Products from India, rice, oil, and everything that probably we haven't added any value to it, we export it to Senegal. On, for example, Senegal have got small-scale industries, like they try to protect their poultry farming, poultry industry, and other industries where they do produce those things. So they try to close the border, say we will not allow these goods to come because it's from third-party countries. Okay, that is the origin part. And we were going to go to WTO. I remember one time when the military was in power, they asked us to go and take Senegal to the WTO dispute settlement. And we were going to spend a lot of money on that. Some of us advised the government that we were going to lose that case anyway, because we didn't have any legs to stand on in terms of the goods that are being sent to Senegal. So just to answer your question, it's because of structural constraints and our inability to create industries that will be able to produce goods that will augment our exports. And as a result, our exports are stagnant in terms of what we get, whereas our import volume keeps rising up, and the trade imbalance invariably will continue to rise up. HIRI.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saihou. And then that brings me back to Mr. Njie. Mr. Njie,
if I may quickly come back here.
Yeah, let me ask Mr. Njie really quick, Mike, and then you can follow up on that. But because there's this trade imbalance we talked about, right? But there's also a decline. There's a significant decline by almost 2 billion, 57% decline in our re-export. And I wanted to, Mr. Njie, to delve into the causes of the decline in the Gambia's re-export trade. And of course, is it connected to, competition from the ports of Dakar, for example, or is it ECOWAS tariff harmonization? We also have custom charges, Senegalese border control, port congestion, and informal trade. And so I wanted Mr. Njie to just, if you can tell us why we have that much of a decline in our re-export trade.
Thank you once again. The Gambian re-export trade peaked somewhere around 1989-91. That was the height of the Gambian re-export trade. And in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, Gambia used to re-export as far as Liberia, Mali, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal. Then our road network were not as extensive as they are today, but the turnaround time at our port was excellent. And also, the major merchants in the Gambia happen to have good arrangements in Asia, Europe, and other places. So they were a bit more competitive. And because of their competitiveness, Gambia was able to re-export quite a lot. But three things changed. In 1994, the securitization of our road network created multiple checkpoints. It slowed down the re-export trade because turnaround time for an average people from Mali, Mauritania, Guinea-Conakry, Guinea-Bissau were not coming as much as they used to. The re-export that was going to Senegal was mostly unrecorded because it was smuggling, fraud. That's what was going to Senegal. But Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, that's why we used to have Garas in Mali, Garas in Guinea in the Gambia. And these people were heavy off-takers of our re-export merchandise. But around 1994, a lot changed. And when this changed, I can tell you, HIRI, that in the Gambia, maybe around 1984, 88, for every 100 containers that landed in Gambia, we can safely say that 68 of them were destined to go outside of the country, whilst we consumed the rest. So Gambia became a supermarket for the region. And it was working well. Why was it working? Administrative barriers were reduced, and the flow of goods, despite the road network we had at the time, was excellent. People were happy that, hey, Gambia doesn't have great roads, but the turnaround time to pick goods into Gambia and out were excellent. And this made Gambia a country of preference for many third countries such as Mali and others. And like I said, when the military came, this changed a lot because we started having many checkpoints. Equally, corruption played a major role because customs became highly transactional. Since it became transactional, it became a missed opportunity for the Gambia to continue the transshipment trade that we used to benefit from. And that's why the trade imbalance has grown, because Gambia was exporting, we were importing and re-exporting for others. But in our import column, it was coming to the Gambia. But mostly and predominantly, it was destined to third countries. Now we don't have many off-takers. And suddenly we've seen a plummet in our total exports. Then you look at our port. Our port hasn't been modernized relatively to ports around our sub-region. Therefore, the competitive edge and the comparative edge Gambia once enjoyed, we no longer. So this is why we now have these issues. But most of them are structural in nature, and it can be fixed, and it will take time to pick up again. And I always tell people that a country must always look at its position vis-a-vis its geo-proximity within the sub-region it lives and see what their competitive and comparative advantages are. A country like Gambia today, we have a God-given geographic advantage that Banjul is closer to Mali relative to Dakar. And yet still, we even have another advantage. If Gambia were to open a free port zone and a dry port at Sabi, most of the people picking goods from Dakar bound to Mali will no longer go to Dakar, because what do they have there? Nothing less than 246 to 260 miles different, which will change the pricing once the good lands at Mali. So now this is where Gambia needs to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Mike, you have a question?
No, it wasn't much of a question. I just want to say it wasn't MPC road that I was looking at. It was World Bank reporting.
Okay.
But also, Saihou mentioned something along the line of the generalized preference scheme that we have with EU. And for UK, since we left the EU, we have what is called DCTS. I know that because I work for them. So almost 99% of imports coming from that part of the world is pretty much zero duty into UK or EU. But of course, we are faced with other challenges such as the quality of what we are producing. I just have a question around this export. Looking at our export profile today, if we talk about exports in the Gambia, we are talking about cashew nuts, groundnuts, fish products, animal feed, mineral oils, or agricultural products. And the countries we trade predominantly today are like China, India, Mali, in West Africa, you know. But if you look at the weaknesses, what do you think is the weaknesses here? Not just the dry port issue, which I would agree, because that is much closer and it will give us an opening to that market. But is it not because of the limitation in terms of industrialization also that we have, and the low value added processing, which was talked about by both of you, and heavy dependency on raw agricultural produce?
Mike, I think you're pretty much correct there. Look, let me just, in terms of our trade with the EU, we used to have what we call the Lomé IV Convention. It started with the Lomé IV Convention. And this was a trade negotiation between ACP countries, African, Caribbean, and Pacific, and Europe. It was not only Africa. We, of course, Africa, Gambia is included, but it also included Caribbean countries and the Pacific nations. And that's why they call it ACP/Lomé IV Convention. And that was negotiation to give our exports, the MFN, the most favored nation tariff, okay, so that we are able to penetrate the EU markets. But obviously, these negotiations were done under the auspices of the World Trade Organization, because if you know, Gambia is a signatory to the World Trade Organization. Most of the countries are United States and the European. Of course, the European Union goes into WTO negotiating as a single bloc, and United States obviously go there as United States of how many states? Compared to Africa, we negotiate on our own. Gambia goes there and negotiate on its own. Senegal does it. It's just of recent that ECOWAS was trying to negotiate as a bloc. But naturally, when EU trade negotiators to the EU have more bargaining power than African countries negotiating on their own. And this has been the Achilles heel in terms of us being able to get good negotiations out of those deals. So just a point, we had Lomé IV, and that was phased out. I think in 2008, I stand to be corrected, by the EPA, Economic Partnership Agreements, the EPAs. And that was also, and you know, sometimes when I hear Gambians complaining about our fishery sector, a lot of people say, oh, these people are taking our fish or whatever. These agreements came from negotiations that our governments, through ECOWAS and others, have negotiated with the European Union, and they got those deals out of those negotiations through EPAs, Economic Partnership Agreements, which replaced the Lomé IV Convention. So Europe has always got advantage over us in terms of getting our products, because but the problem we have, it's not rocket science, and I think you alluded to that. The problem we have, our goods don't have value added. Like Gambia produces a lot of peanuts. You said about exports, yes, fisheries product, peanuts, cashew nuts mainly. And when you go to our trade data, you also see petroleum. I don't know where on earth that comes from, but you also see timber, okay? So, but the thing we have is, the challenges are we export these virtually raw products, Mike. And when you board any plane, most of the time you usually say they serve you with peanuts, but they do add value. They packaging this into, and they add value and sell it, you know, at a good rate, and they benefit out of the European industries because they add value to this. They're able to sell these products and get more. Whereas Gambia, what we do is package raw materials, raw groundnuts, and sell it to the European markets. Obviously, you're not going to get much out of that compared to Western industries bringing our goods and add value to us. And one of the challenges, probably we will go into that. Another problem that we have is technical barriers to trade. TBTs, technical barriers to trade, in terms of able to package our products to standards of the European market. That is it. It's good to have, and we don't have the industries that are able to do this. We don't even have the logistics at our airports to be able to meet this, our seaports, because when you export, sometimes you go through red code and whatever. They are able to have good scanners, they're able to have good things to be able to, and Western world is very, very, we all know, they really care about their citizens. They don't want products to come into the countries where, and we will go into this, the issue of aflatoxin when it comes to oil granules, okay? So European unions have got requirements that they have to meet when it comes to the content of aflatoxin in our thing because of the risk involved. And so these are the technical barriers to our trade, Mike. This is why we are not able to penetrate the Western market. Amidst all this GTLS scheme, we have got good tariff rates. The opportunities are there. And when you go to the United States, the AGOA is there, African Growth Economic Opportunity Act. We got phased out of it, but I was able to have about 2017, 2018, it came back again. That is for the US market. But we are still not able to capitalize on that because of this technical barriers to trade that I alluded to. And unless we're able to maneuver around this and solve this problem, and this is not peculiar to Gambia, by the way. This is not peculiar to Gambia. Most of the African countries have got these technical issues to be able to penetrate. And this is why Africa's share of world trade is so low. The Africa's share of the world trade is pretty much low. It's about how many percent? Less than 3%. The entire African continent, our continent to world trade, and that's dismal. And it's because of this supply. We have the supply side constraints that we have that we all alluded to, Mike.
So, right. So, if I may put it slightly to Nyang as well. You were talking about the export weaknesses that we have and things we can do to improve them. But it appears to me this is well known, talking to many people in the Gambia, both include government and people that are involved in the business, because of this low value added processing, also this limited infrastructure that we have for logistics and port constraints. These are things within our ability to improve. Why are we having problem with them? Why are we finding it difficult to improve it, to maximize our situation?
Thank you. Before I answer, Saidily alluded to something about petroleum. If you look at our trade now, you will see a spike. And Gambia is not consuming the petrol, but Gambia is fast becoming a third transshipment country for a country like Mali. Yeah, so Mali picks up mostly ego, that's diesel, from the Gambia, and it may be insignificant in the overall Malian need for petroleum, but it's big for Gambia, and it has really changed, our trade vis-a-vis the amount of diesel leaving Gambia. Imagine all vessels being imported to the Gambia and transshipped to Mali. So it is changing. And also in the past, if you look at the export statistics, diamond, gold were big, timber was big, and we don't have the landmass to export the amounts of timber we've said that we've been given what you call a certificate of origin. Because once it has a Gambian certificate of origin, it is considered a Gambian export. Mm-hmm. So our figures, to a large extent, were showing cracks that happened in Sierra Leone in the early days of the blood diamond business, and also as late as 2016 when Jammeh left with the rosewood. So these are things that have really made Gambian statistic to look different relative to what you and I know about our country and the resources we have. Then you asked a question about the gap. Is that what you asked, the trade gap between?
Yeah, the trade gap, because I'm looking at the reason for our weakness in exports, which both of you talked about, and the problems that are causing that. It appears to me we know them, but we seem not to be doing enough.
Yes, our weaknesses, like I said, we inherited them from colonialism. The Gambian economy, the way it was modeled by the Europeans, especially the British, we haven't done much to change, because if you look at it, the only good thing we have done is how to spend, but not how to earn. Why? Because structurally, we're yet to change the economy. And equally, like he said, we have some technical issues, be it a sanitary issues, and others that are affecting Gambia. Simple packaging. Today, baobab powder. Many health food stores in the US would like to buy it from the Gambia. But guess what? The only way we can give it to them is raw. Why? Because the packaging is not just getting a nice package, but being able to break down the nutritional benefits per gram or milligram, whatever it is, on the packaging and all that. And we are yet to get to that level. So therefore, we are missing out, not that we don't have what we can sell, but we lack the technical expertise. Food laboratories. Right now in the Gambia, they're not the only now. I know of two companies that are, consistently shipping to the UK, Radville Farms and another agribusiness. But what do they ship? Produce. The next level is transformation. And we're yet to be able to transform stuff. I'm not talking about a Gambian lady taking catfish, geja, dried bonga to US or UK. No, I'm talking about a B2B type of arrangement where a Gambian business sells directly to a UK business. We are not able to do that because we cannot meet the technical requirements that will ensure that our goods can land on the shelves of Tesco's and other places. So the trade gap has been widening. But I have a different view. I think the Gambia first need to look at what I call an import substitution strategy to close the gap. An import substitution strategy is to ensure that simple things like juice, because we don't have to meet those rigid standards in terms of labeling for us to sell juice to ourselves. Why should Gambia be buying Don Simon when oranges galore in Gambia, melon galore, baobab galore, dita galore, tamarind galore? Something is fundamentally wrong because we haven't disrupted the pre-colonial architecture of the Gambian economy to suit the post-colonial architecture that Gambia need to be self-reliant. And export substitution is a way to close the gap in the medium term, whilst looking for ways to also produce and send by bolstering our technical expertise to ensure that our goods can meet the requirements of markets that they will have to enter into.
Yeah, so that sounds like a great strategy, by the way. But again, a follow-up question here to Mr. Njie, looking at our exports again. Our local production for cereals, for example, only meets 60% of our consumption requirements, and rice alone accounts for approximately 70 million of recorded merchandise that we imported to the country. Can the Gambia be economically independent in terms of rice consumption without importing from outside?
I'm not an advocate of rice self-sufficiency in the Gambia because, see, any economy, you need to look at where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. The average cost of a ton of rice cultivated in the Gambia relative to imported rice is completely different. So I would love to see Gambia reduce our rice dependency, but not self-sufficiency, because it means we will transfer a lot of resources, manpower, into growing rice. And that will not be in the Gambia's best interest in terms of growing its economy. We have the land that can produce easily 60% of the country's need. But going rice auto self-sufficiency, meaning 100%, it's a trade-off. In economics, everything is a trade-off. You do that, it's at the expense of other sectors. So when people talk about this, they always look at rice self-sufficiency in isolation. I'm a macroeconomist. I don't look at things in isolation. I look at things in a way whereby if I put my manpower, labor, and resources into rice cultivation, what else will suffer vis-a-vis the overall economy? So for me, this is a debate that many proponents of rice self-sufficiency don't see, and they have to factor in that the more we want to be self-sufficient, we will employ more people in the rice fields. The more people we put in the rice fields, others suffer. Now, the opportunity cost of that suffering is once we produce 1 ton of Nerica rice, upland rice, and it costs us, let's say, $2,700, and we are able to buy imported rice into the country at 950 to 1,000, I'm just giving you numbers. Is this the best use of resources? The answer is no, because the end game is for the rice to be consumed. Do I want to consume rice that is a premium to the economy? No. So we need to find a balance. But if you look at Gambia, we really need to look at our primary cash crops. Because in the 70s, cotton was doing good. Sesame was doing good. I'm talking about exports. Sesame and cotton were doing great. Groundnut was doing good. But things have happened. Cotton is no longer a cash crop in the Gambia. Sesame is no longer a cash crop in the Gambia. So yes, these things filter into our balance of trade, and we see it. It filters into our forex because we are not producing as much as we used to produce. So Gambia need to have smart cash crops, high value cash crops, and try and reorient the economy. Today, I have been talking about this for the past 12, 14 years, and Gambians are not listening. The Gambian farmer has been in abject poverty since colonialism continued into post-colonial Gambia. And that's why many a son of a Gambian farmer don't want to end up like their parents. And you don't blame them. Why? Because farming is a noble profession, but yet still it's not a way to have self-sustenance. What do we need to do? We need high-value produce. High-value produce, a farmer with 2 hectares can generate $400,000 a year, and a farmer with 50 hectares of groundnut cannot generate $20,000. So what is a high-value commodity or produce? Marijuana, for medical use, of course, for export, of course, in a controlled environment, of course. And these are ways we can close our trade gap sooner if we're bold enough and be willing to take a first mover advantage and have the mind to disrupt policy. Thank you.
Disrupting policy, of course. But we'll talk a little bit about the other crops that we can bring in terms of recreating or replacing the loss of our cash crops such as sesame and cotton. But Mr. Saidily, and unmute yourself and tell us, are you a proponent of rice self-sufficiency in the Gambia?
Yes, I am. I think because I know you referenced to the data. I don't know what you said, but I know in 2024, Gambia spent about $137 million on rice importation. So, but you referenced to a much lower figure. I don't know whether that was the first quarter or the second quarter. Was that a quarterly figure or an annual figure?
Yeah, so I was looking from the analysis here, and then what I referenced is the 60% of consumption requirements are not met by our domestic cereal production. And I said that broken rice alone accounted for approximately 70.1 million.
Okay, that is specific to broken rice. Okay.
Because broken rice alone is 70.1 million, and that is in 2024.
2024. That makes it, but the total was about $138 million that we spent on importing rice, and that shows the huge burden on us in terms of rice importation. I remember when the first president was there, Sadauda, one time I think when we had the ERP, the SAP, Strategic Adjustment Program, and there was shortage of rice in the country. You know, an average Gambian likes rice. Wherever we go, even if we don't eat rice, we feel we haven't eaten. So rice is our staple food. And Sadada was saying we need to diversify. You know, we have coups and other things. We shouldn't be pretty much, and that didn't go down well with some Gambians. They said, no, nyun malo lang buga. We want malo. You know, after mano. So Sadada made that comment to try to appeal to the Gambian people that we should not pretty much rely on rice, and that's why the pressure on importation of rice is just steadily going up. You know, and until recently, when we had this brilliant guy, this Gambian guy from the United States, who actually went to Jahali Pachar and is now producing a lot of domestic rice production. And that is now having an impact because he's doing pretty well. I participated in his project appraisal prior to him going to, and he was going to invest in this thing. And we had a lot of conversation, and I'm happy that materialized. I just, can't remember the name of the guy again because we used to have a lot of conversation.
Mr. Dabo.
Yeah, Mr. Dabo. Yes, that one. You're right. Mr. Dabo, Maro Farms. We used to have, prior to him moving, he used to share his data with me, and we used to have conversation around this. And Mr. Njie said something about import substitution. I wrote my dissertation for a college on import substitution. That was my dissertation. And it's something that I really like, and I think is something, because the Gambian economy, we cannot move from step 1 to 10. We have to do it in phases. That's how you deal with economic danka. But you cannot just get up, even if the Asian countries, the Asian tigers, countries like Taiwan, in the 1970s were pretty much in the same position as the Gambia. But over the thing, Taiwan pretty much, they improved their computer chip sector, and truly they into manufacturing and industrialization. They did it steadily. And for us, I think, if I'm going to advise the government, I think at this stage, we have to try to build up our SMEs, small scale, medium enterprises. HIRI. That's where you start to build up. Okay? Gambia right now, we started it. I don't know whether you remember when PPP government was there, IBAS, Indigenous Business Advisory Service. Under the PPP government, that was a good scheme. But unfortunately, when the new government came in, it just died its natural death. And I don't mean Barrow government, the APRC government. And we used to have a very good relationship with IBAS. They used to give financial support to small-scale business enterprises. And because we didn't have the agricultural bank at the time, so a lot of people relied on having support from this. But where is that now? Why has that not? Why can't we go back to the basics? I know Mr. Njie and myself probably talking, if you're not an economist, you might see we are talking a lot in abstract here. But the thing is, this is how you steadily, but you have to get the listening ear of those in power. You can be the best economist and give the best policy advice. But the powers that be, if they are not interested to listen to you, all that advice, all the technical advice will go into vain. Gambia has a lot of smart economies in the system. Gambia have a lot of smart people. Mr. Njie, I know Mr. Njie used to work at the Ministry of Finance, and I think he had one time gone to the IMF on some work. He is a Gambia's brain, and he was at the OIC. But with all this good knowledge, but we are losing out because the politicians and the powers that be don't want to listen to their experts. And this is why all what we learn from universities, what we learn from is theories basically. Okay, but when you come as a young, I remember when I went to Taiwan, I did my postgraduate diploma in Taipei University. I came because they sent us there to study the Taiwanese model. Okay, when I came back at the ministry, I was so frustrated here. Any recommendation you say, hale bi hamut bopam, ki dafa ñew rek mu fogg ne mom mo gëna jang ñep. Non Njie, I used to say that ki dafa joge Taiwan rek mu fogg ne mom mo ñu gëna jang. Exactly. You want to bring it because that was the purpose. They sent you to Taiwan to learn their model. You come and you wrote your report and you want to introduce how the Taiwan model, but you are so frustrated. They will not listen to you. And these are the things that we know. And I'm giving a recommendation, a prescription. One of the prescriptions that I would give to any future government, let's try to build up our SMEs sector. Through that, we can go and we have to attract foreign direct investment here. Because Gambia, look, United States or UK, pretty much there are a lot of American companies in United Kingdom. The reason why politically Kingdom hardly says no to the United States, there's a reason for it. Most of the foreign companies here, American companies, America has so much investment in the UK, and the British politicians don't want to risk that special relationship. Of course, under Trump, it was threatened, and because of the way he was behaving. But these are some of the things. The world is about economic interest. And I am saying that for us to mitigate some of these things, we have to bring back that SME model and build up our industry. Senegal is starting doing that. Senegal right now at a point, they don't import poultry products. Okay? Yes. Yeah, they don't import poultry products, Senegal. And Gambia still is importing poultry products. And this is not good for with the tourism sector. It's a key thing that if we start encouraging local production of poultry, come on, we can ban importation of poultry. It's going to save us a lot of foreign connings, and it's going to reduce the pressure on our balance of payments deficit that we have, which goes wider and wider. So what we need to do, and it's going to reduce the pressure on the depreciation of the dollar. The dollar, when this government came into power, I do tell a lot of NPP guys, and they think we are politicizing. When this government came to power, what was the value of the dollar to the pound? Today it's 92. And the dollar is depreciating because we are not producing much. We are not exporting much. So if you ask me the solution, we have not gone there. These are the areas that we need to look at. It's not rocket science. These countries that develop, Mauritius, you take on Mauritius. I went to Mauritius. We studied the Mauritian model of how they transform their economy. It's not rocket science, but it's the ability to have the government and the politicians and the ministers. Because look, you are just an expert at the ministry. All what you can do is to give policy recommendation, come up with cabinet papers, come up with brilliant ideas. But it's the politicians that sit in cabinet need to implement those ideas. And if they don't do it, you get frustrated. You understand? So this is the problem that we have. Gambia is such a small country. Come on. Look, we should be able to solve our energy crisis situation, power issue. Since 1900, we are still not able to solve the energy crisis in the Gambia, HIRI. How is that a problem? Because Gambia is such a small country. Now they have invested $647 million into NAWEC, into energy, but still Kamaj is continuing. This thing sometimes is so frustrating when you talk about it. And as somebody who God has given you that ability to go to university and study this, you are a Gambian. You want that country to develop. You want transformation. Mr. Njie talk about transformation. How can we transform when we have to deal with the basics, HIRI. And until we deal with the basics, we are in for a rough ride. Thank you.
HIRI, may I come in, please?
Yes, but Mr. Njie, also I want to come in. You probably have something in mind to come in. Saihou is triggering everyone now.
I just want to comment what Saihou just said. You see, we have in the Gambia, policy-wise, we have oceans or islands of excellence, meaning we have a silo mentality. Each ministry is doing their thing, but we don't have an ocean of excellence because today, agriculture, tourism, and trade should work together to have what you call real sector linkages.
Yeah.
The real sectors of the economy, agriculture and tourism, must work closely with trade to produce what is needed for the hotels, restaurants, and other leisure businesses in the Gambia needs. But unfortunately, our real sectors are standalones rather than integrated. So Gambia needs an integrated look towards growth. And secondly, I don't care how good an economist you are, if you don't have a buy-in of the political class to execute some of these things, we can change the country. I am not boasting, but I swear to God, Gambia is an easy fix. Theoretically, it's an easy fix. Why is it not fixable for the time being? We don't have people who have a bird's eye view of the economy. You need to sit on top and look at Gambia on the bottom and see how best you can put everything together rather than leave Gambia to work in silence. Agriculture working alone, tourism working alone, culture working alone. We need to find a way to bring these things together so complementarity happens. When complementarity happens, there will be a need for off-takers of what the other sector produce. Also, if you look at the trade imbalance, intra-Africa trade, intra-regional trade, we trade more with Asia. Our next door neighbor, Gambia takes a lot from Senegal. Senegal hardly takes anything from the Gambia. And the intra-African trade also plays a lot because we need to find a way whereby our economies are dependent on each other in terms of what they need. But no, whenever an African needs something, Asia is the first point of call rather than their immediate neighbors. And their immediate neighbors do have things that they need. But no, we don't. So closing the gap needs a multifaceted approach. Import substitution will do part of it. The intra-African trade arrangements will do part of it. And also the government of the Gambia trying to create a real sector linkages between all the productive sectors of the economy and see how they can feed each other rather than be standing alone and looking for solutions independent of the macroeconomic environment. Thank you.
Well, you mentioned export diversification and value added to our products, right? So let's say, if you look at it, most of the products we are also exporting, we are exporting them in their raw form, right? And of course, export substitution. You also touched on that a little bit. Can you tell us how we can diversify our exports, and how do we, when you talk about export substitution, what do you exactly mean?
Well, for you to diversify, you must have multiple things to export. Gambia, if we want our trade gap to close and our export figures to go up, we need to look at the land tenure system because we're talking about commercial farming. You cannot have commercial farming in an environment where land tenure is the way it is in the Gambia. It's not encouraging for commercial farming to thrive. Secondly, we talk about mechanization. But unfortunately, this current Minister of Agriculture doesn't understand what mechanization is. Gambian farmers are not in need of heavy-duty tractors in terms of them having it in their possession. A jar oil is someone that the Ministry of Agriculture could have approached. Jar oil, if you order 300 tractors and distribute them along all the regions of the country, whenever a farmer needs a service, you provide, they can pay 80%, and the 20% we will give them, we will contribute to it. It's better than government telling farmers, pay me 50% on a tractor, that when I use my tractor to till my land, I'm using it for 3 hours out of 4 months. That's a bad capital expenditure. A Gambian farmer really needs availability to good seeds, availability to labor, and someone else need to provide the logistics of clearing the land. Then the farmer will focus on his core agricultural activity, planting. So honestly, the biggest problem in Gambia is thinkers are not allowed to think, and executioners of policy are in the wrong place to execute policy because they look at things that are happening in, okay, you look at South Africa. Commercial farming in South Africa needs heavy duty because they're doing large scale. I am yet to see any commercial farmer in Gambia with more than even 500 hectares. I haven't seen it yet. Meaning 500 hectares of land being economically employed year-round. It's not. So what the Gambian farmer needs is mechanization, but light mechanization. And India is the right country to look into. Why? Because Indian farmers, the Indian government has tried its best to do what you call reverse engineering. They have taken a lot of technology, reverse engineered into simple mechanical tools that can be easily repaired without waiting for spares and others, and also they are light. Power tillers that are small, sprayers, things to spray their pesticides and others. This is how Gambia needs to look at it. We are not a big country. Our farmers are not large-scale farmers. Even Radville Farms in Gambia is considered a commercial farm. You go outside of Gambia, Radville Farm is not a commercial farm because the acreage that they're farming is not that vast. But yes, in Gambia, that's what we call commercial farms. But in the Gambia, we cannot grow commercial farms because today, if I want to buy 300 hectares of land, I may have to talk to 12 cabilos just to get this land. Then to take care of the paperwork, there'll be infighting within these families. To release the land to me is a problem. So we really need to look at our land tenure. We really need to look at our agricultural policy in terms of assistance to farmers. And also, we need to work, here, this is the most important, we need to work on introducing new smart cash crops. Thank you.
Smart cash crops. I would want you to talk about these smart cash crops, but I want to bring Saidily. So we talked about how much Gambia imports from Senegal, and almost Gambia exported nothing to Senegal. And there is this African continental free trading trade area that is being created to allow African countries to trade among themselves, with duty-free, creating duty-free zones.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, first of all, what is this effort all about? And at this moment, how is it going to benefit the Gambia, or is it actually going to harm the Gambia?
First of all, the objective of this, like any free trade zone or any economic zone, the idea is to boost trade. Njie spoke about intra-African trade. And there is a distinction between inter-trade and intra. Intra is the trade within ourselves, within African countries. And that is pretty low, okay? Because even though the African governments, and let's start before we go to Africa as a region, let's start with our sub-region, okay? ECOWAS. ECOWAS has got Economic Trade Liberalization Scheme, ETLS, and that's been there. There's been a lot of things now, even before they started the idea of coming a single currency. There is a discussion going on having Gambia, Liberia, Nigeria. I think Guinea pull out, but these countries want to have a single country. I remember before I came here, we had a lot of meetings in Lagos about this single currency, and I'm still surprised I'm here. I've been here for almost 2 decades, and that's still not materialized. But believe in me, this negotiation started way back before I came to the UK. We were having what they call convergence criteria, a country have to meet a certain criteria before you enter that common currency. But still, it has not been implemented. And the idea is good. Now they want to migrate it to the Africa as a region. But I think if the regional one doesn't work, HIRI, tell me, it's common sense. If the regional one couldn't create impact, how can the regional one have created Africa? It doesn't make sense, because ECOWAS has come up with all these fanciful ideas. Njie referenced Africa when it comes to writing brilliant policies. I think we are even better than the West. Go to ECOWAS, you see good policies, but the question is implementation. ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, I will go into the details, explain to people what it entails. The ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme is just a scheme to encourage trade between ECOWAS countries. And what they said is simple. If Gambia have for example, you have a handicraft, a businessman dealing with handicraft products, in order to produce that product, 60% of the raw materials must be from Gambia. You have to, in producing that good, 60% of the local content has to come from Gambia. And not a lot of countries are not meeting this. But another challenge here that we will have, Njie referenced saying we tend to trade more with EU and other countries despite the distance, the geographical location. But it's because of the challenges, and the challenges that we spoke earlier on about the structural problems. And that is, even transportation is a problem. Sometimes it's better. I remember one time, like I said, I traveled to Mauritius. If I tell you the route that we took, you wouldn't believe. It was quicker to fly from Banjul to Heathrow and from Heathrow to Mauritius than go through Africa links. The airline industry in Africa, in terms of Africans communicating within themselves, is pretty poor. So if you want to travel from Banjul, probably you go through Addis and then go to Mauritius, you might spend 2 days on the way. Whereby If you fly from Gambia, you go direct to Heathrow, and Heathrow you fly, then you arrive in Mauritius Cooker, and that is the sad situation. And the same thing is affecting our ability to have the sea transport also is having the same problem. So how can we trade, HIRI? How can we trade between ourselves when we cannot deal with the basics of sea transportation, air transportation? We have those challenges, and this is why intra-Africa trade is very poor, apart from other challenges that we have. But these are some of the constraints that we have. We cannot trade a lot with other countries. So to answer your question, the idea is great. It will be good.
So the infrastructure.
Yeah, the infrastructure constraints. The problem is the idea is good for Africa to trade within itself. And you see, for your economy to grow, the simple thing is you have to trade more with the rest of the world. For your economy to grow, you have to trade more with the rest of the world. There is no magic to this. If you trade more with the rest of the world, you tend to earn more foreign exchange. And then you will not be bothered to go to the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and the World Bank, because right now what is happening in our country, we are pretty much relying on the IMF and the World Bank. Anytime we have a problem, CDK will fly to Washington to negotiate, another deal. And that's why you see government try IMF and the World Bank. Oh, they have given another loan scheme to the government, because these are like they are doing business. They give you the money. It's not free. You pay back at the interest rates. And yes, but I'm just digressing a bit. But coming back to the free zone thing, the idea is great. But you and I know, I don't think it's going to work successfully, because even the ETLS in West ECOWAS hasn't worked. And this is why we are foot dragging on the issue of the single currency. I heard last time that they are now about to implement it. But now will Gambians be comfortable to give away our dalasi to bring this common currency called the ECO? This is the problem. And will Nigerians be happy to give away their naira? The Ghanaians say, oh, let's get rid of the city. Europe did it with euro, but of course there's no comparison. Even with Europe, that's why United Kingdom now we are not into it. We are still maintaining our pound sterling, all right. And other countries in Europe said no, we don't want to go into the single currency. But African man, I think here, if you ask me, we are trying to jump into something. I think we need to address this with a lot of care, this single currency thing, because our economies haven't reached that level where we can have that convergence of a single monetary union. Thank you.
Actually, I was going to go into this single currency, but at a later date, at the end of the program, but you brought it up. However, I will still reserve it until the end of the program, unless we want to talk about it now.
Don't forget to bring it. I think we'll bring it later on, Mike.
Yeah,
but
because I think it's an important area. But the issue about West Africa free trade, if you look at the free movement of goods and services, this is there. But the reason why it's not happening or delivering is due to protectionism. You have other countries setting their own rules as to what can enter their country and what cannot leave their country. And the road networks are poor, million different checkpoints, if you want to try it. So the inconvenience is just enormous. Expanding that to the rest of Africa, I don't see how that benefits us when we cannot even utilize the West African model. And also, I think when we look at ECOWAS, I think ECOWAS could have done better. If you look at ECOWAS model and the European Commission model, it's almost the same. But ECOWAS lacked the legislative parliament. We have traveling parliamentarians, calling them ECOWAS parliamentarians. But ECOWAS lacked that legislative arm, which can decide for citizens of West Africa. And basically stood for the citizens of West Africa, rather than being dictated by heads of states. So I think that control needs to be relinquished in order for them to enjoy the same free trade. Because if you look at the European Parliament, which decide trade rules, movement, services, and many other regulations, it doesn't decide for individual countries, but European citizens. And I think this is why they need to improve so that it can stop the individual government coming up with their own individual ideas in terms of trade and remove these barriers.
Yeah, Mike, if I can do a bit of pushback on that. You said the reason why we are not breaking the barriers in terms of this We have all the scheme like the ETLS for ECOWAS, but again, the backdrop of that, we are not able because of the protectionism measures. Yes, you're right, but let's look at the rationale behind that. Look, it's not like open-ended, like they come just because you are a manufacturer in Senegal or in Lomé, then by default your product should be able to enter Gambia. There is a criteria, and that's the key. That local content, like Gambia, for example, we barely meet that. Gambia, were the only two that meet. Most of these others couldn't meet the criteria, and that was a huge challenge for Gambia. And this is why what Nyang said is true. Senegal barely takes anything from us because we cannot meet the 60% local content, and that is the key criteria. So
here's the thing. Let me just reference on one thing.
Yeah,
I think you're talking about the originating status, right?
Yeah,
the originating status of the product.
Yeah.
But again, if you look at the originating status, if you import something from China into the Gambia, it becomes part of the free circulation rules.
No.
In terms of when the goods is clear, within, if it's the same customs union, because we like that.
No, gentlemen.
It's a different scheme.
It's what you call a common market.
Yeah.
So ECOWAS is a common market.
Right.
And we have free movements of goods and services originating from and within the common market.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they are saying these goods that are originating from and within the common market must have a threshold, a minimum of 60% locally produced, then it can have a label of a made in the Gambia.
Yes.
Without which, then you will have other countries passing their goods to Gambia, repackaging it and selling them. That becomes a leakage, and that's not good for any economy. So I understand when Senegalese people stop our trucks at the border,
exactly,
people complain.
Yeah.
But what are we shipping? Chicken from Brazil.
Yeah.
Frozen chicken, frozen.
Yeah.
From Brazil. Rice, oil, fabric.
Yeah.
So I understand because Senegal has Sotiba. Senegal have Sucrier African. That's the company Sucrier African. That's the sugar company in Futa or somewhere else. Why would they allow bags of sugar
from Gambia
come into Gambia, get into their country so cheaper than the sugar produced in Futa? It defies logic. So I understand them, and that's not protectionism.
No, I'm not referring to that in particular as protectionism in relation to origin status, because I understand the origin status. The 60% threshold, one might say is too high. However, I understand what they're referring to. But if we operate within the same economic framework and goods become part of that free circulation, right, I think we should be able to trade, not necessarily refer to it as originating from one country in terms of export.
But we don't have a custom union.
Yeah, exactly. So
if
I think that
buy
customs
a car
union
from the US, bring it down to Dakar, I pay duties in the Gambia, not Senegal.
Through transit.
The car landed in Senegal for transshipment.
Yeah.
We have few fundamentals that we need to address. Back to the ECO. You see, the ECO, we've been talking about it since 2001.
It's been a long time.
And the biggest problem that countries don't like to talk about is called economic sovereignty. Today, if Gambia was part of the ECO, Barrow will not be building these roads because the central bank cannot be giving money because we would have been under the West Africa Central Bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest problem that countries are faced is one of economic sovereignty. And the reason why we're calling for primary and secondary convergence is to avoid imported inflation into the zone from second countries. A bottle of Coca-Cola should sell relatively the same in Nigeria, Gambia, and Senegal if we happen to have the ECO. But the reason we cannot do that because our economies are operating differently. Our rate of borrowing, because the primary convergence is talking about borrowing and other things. So without these, we will not have uniformity across the zone. Without uniformity across the zone, value of one ECO is different from one country to another, and that's not what we want to create. Because if you create that, you have a lot of information asymmetries that will affect pricing. So to avoid that, they have created, the monetary theory has created primary and secondary convergence. And this primary and secondary convergence must be met year in, year out for a period. Then it means the economy has taken a particular shape. And then once you meet convergence, you can be accepted into the zone. If not, you'll have people free riding on the zone. You will have inflation that will be imported to member countries of the zone that we haven't created. But the biggest problem is our political class are not willing to relinquish economic sovereignty to an ultra body called the West Africa Monetary Bank.
Okay, so since we are already in this eco business now, given what you were saying, and we talked about our export situation, right? Because in order for us to attract this eco into the Gambia and to stay in the Gambia in large sums to do some of our things, we need to be able to sell something to attract it.
No, not necessarily.
Because it wouldn't be in the same level as Dalasi.
Allow me, not necessarily, because before we even trade, we have to be member of the monetary zone for ECO to be accepted. If you're not member of the economic zone, where do you do your clearing? When you have currency, it needs clearing. How do you clear your ECO?
Yeah, let's assume Gambia join fully and become part of this economic zone, right? This single currency economic zone. How do we, as a country, the Gambia, where we are literally trading at a deficit to everyone, that are going to be part of that single currency? How do we keep this currency?
The whole idea is the moment Gambia gets into the ECO, there won't be arbitrage and other things. So the first thing that will happen, the Ghana town trade will boost. And when Ghana town takes these dried fish and others to Accra, they will in return bring stuff here. So by virtue of having the currency, your trade profile changes. Because the arbitrage that was happening and the difference in exchange that was happening in merchant trying to buy dollars to go somewhere has been eradicated. So that in exchange create and boost trade. So I believe having an ECO in the Gambia, it will change our trade profile vis-a-vis the sub-region.
Okay, because I'm trying to make a reference to when the EU initially introduced this, and Greek was not able to join, and the UK government under Brown as a chancellor, there was a massive debate about UK joining Euro, and they set out three or four tests. I don't know if Sego can remember it. And all the tests, according to them, two didn't meet the criteria to give up the sterling.
Yeah, that's convergence.
That's all the convergence criteria is about, Mike.
If you look at Greece, their debt profile was a primary problem for convergence.
Exactly. Yeah.
So those things are structural and fiscal in nature, and sometimes monetary, but mostly fiscal. Government borrowing, what's the debt profile? And these things, if they are not in order, the other countries will suffer because Greece will free ride on them and import inflation into the zone from Greece.
So do we think as a country, the Gambia, are we ready?
Okay, if you look at
we have primary and secondary convergence.
Yeah.
Meaning, before you get into the zone, there is a minimum threshold and requirements that a country needs to meet. Today, if we arbitrarily say we want to create the euro, we are setting ourselves all for failure because we have macroeconomic imbalances within the zone. And these macroeconomic imbalances can only be neutralized through convergence.
Yeah, in fact, you talk about the primary criteria. One of it is for us to have a single-digit inflation.
Exactly.
Okay, single-digit inflation. Gambia, are we at that level so far? our inflation is not single digit at the minute. This central bank deficiting of not more than 10% of the previous tax revenue, and all these criteria, it's in terms of 4%, is the physical deficit of not more than 4% of the GDP. So these are the criteria. I remember when we were in Lagos that time. No, I think it was in Freetown. We had that meeting. At that time, only Nigeria met up the criteria. Okay, I don't know the other countries, but Gambia, certainly we were far from meeting the criteria. If the primary, you talk about the secondary criteria. So this is in progress, but right now I don't think we are ready as a country, because number one, that fundamental criteria of single-digit inflation, Gambia certainly haven't met that. We are in the situation where, and you referenced this whole thing about making comparison between Africa and Europe. I said earlier, it's all about your ability to negotiate and bargain for good things. I reference to the Lome 4 Convention, which got replaced by the EPA, Economic Partnership Agreements, the EPAs. A lot of people don't probably look into that. So Europe is able to have good negotiation with us, because the thing is, they negotiate as a bloc, Mike, collectively. When you go to Geneva, you see EU trade negotiator. They have EU trade negotiator. We don't have African trade negotiator at the World Trade Organization. What we do is we have Senegal, they are negotiating on their own. We see Gambia, tiny little Gambia. And in fact, we couldn't even afford Gambia at the time. I don't know now whether they have, but we couldn't even have a desk office at Geneva. So anytime we are going for negotiations, our officers have to fly to Geneva. But EU have a permanent trade negotiator. United States have a permanent trade negotiator at the World Trade Organization in Geneva. And this is where the rules are discussed, the rules around MFN treatment and all that. So when you are not in that, you pretty much lose out, Mike. And this is why Europe is able to, you're talking about, oh, we cannot trade more with ourselves, but they're able to negotiate and get good deals out of Africa where we are not. So we are not ready. And this is where I'm always in for this integration. We need to have serious, we need to be serious about our integration. Africa coming together as one block. But I think it is, whether it's in our nature, I don't know, but we like to go solo, Africa. Today, if you say Gambia and Senegal should be one country, it's a big problem. But you see mighty Germany and France coming together under EU. These are powerful economies, all right? But they are still able to come together because they see interest in having that bargaining power. Whereas Africa, we want to do things on our own, and it makes us weaker. Can you imagine Gambia? Can Gambia have a good deal negotiating with Europe? No. And we come through ECOWAS, and ECOWAS itself is a junior partner when it comes to EU. So particularly when EU is financing us, they are giving us support. All right, and all that. What is there for you to go toe-to-toe in those negotiations, Mike? So our situation is precarious, and until we get out of this rabbit hole that we are in for a rough ride. Thank you.
So it appears to me we know our problem as a country. We have the talent that can diagnose our problems. Yet it appears since independence, someone has been ignoring these problems and assuming everything will be okay. Why is that?
Yeah, but we are not done with the problems yet. We want let's highlight the problems. We have to. The purpose of this conversation is to bring the problems to light, so we can accept that we do have problems. And I wanted Mr. Njie to talk about a smart crop exportation, but most importantly, what about our ports? Do you think our ports it's a competitive commercial gateway, or is it just an unavailable entry point for the Gambia?
You've asked a very important question, and Mike was talking about the problems. Africa knows all its problems, and Africa has all its solutions, because we have paid many a consultant to do studies. But unfortunately, the will is not there to execute. Therefore, these documents end up being accessories to many shelves in many high offices in and around the continent. Now, in the case of Gambia, one place that this country hasn't invested significantly is in what you call economic intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Economic intelligence. is probably one of the most important things in keeping a country competitive in today's global dynamic. Senegal, when it realized that major Senegalese traders were crossing the border to come to Gambia to buy goods, what did they do? They repositioned the port in Dakar. They worked hard to create and revitalize the deep sea port in Ziguinchor, and now created another port in middle Senegal in Saloum, or in Fatick. That's the bridge in Punjun and the port. There is a port there. What will this do? A vessel from France can come from Marseille straight into Funjun. That's right under the Nelson Mandela Bridge. That bridge going to Dakar now from Fatick. What does that do? It has really offsetted Gambia's port. And not only that, if you look at air access, the amount of travelers that used to originate and terminate their travel in Gambia has reduced significantly since the new airport moved from Dakar to Jas. So now we have what we call leakage in throughput. What does that mean? It means for every 100 tourists that come to Gambia, 19 to 20 of them originate and terminate their travels in Senegal and continue to Gambia. In a while, what's going to happen? Our airport will end up being a regional airport more than an international hub, because Senegal, the pricing is better, frequency of flights is better, service is better. So what does that do? It makes Gambia a regional hub rather than the international airport. So what has all this had to do with economic intelligence? It's economic intelligence that forced the Senegalese to reposition their economy and infrastructure to support and complement the economy. Now, you ask about smart cash crops, right?
Yes.
Smart cash crops are called high-value crops. Today, why should a Gambian farmer grow 4 acres of groundnut only to have 6 tons of groundnut and to sell it for $46,000 a ton, when they can grow other produce and sell a kilo for 3,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds? Now, here is the thing. When people talk about medicinal marijuana, what people don't know, you can get THC from hemp. People will not smoke hemp, but hemp will give you the oil that is found in marijuana. Same oil, THC, CBD. Why is it that Gambia is averse to what the global economy needs? I always tell people, if I were to advise the Minister of Agriculture, I would say you have a natural enclave called Jinak. Use Jinak as a model, create greenhouses, grow high-end marijuana, get GRA to be on the ground. Once people harvest, they put a seal, just like how container doors have a seal. From Jinak, you get a boat. You leave Jinak Island directly to Bafloto. Bafloto and the airport is less than 5 minutes. Airport, export. So the mitigation factor there is you are worried that this cannabis may end up in country. It cannot because of pricing. The local cannabis sells for $25,000 a kilo. Why will a Gambian farmer risk selling for 3,000 pounds to put it in country when someone has already offered him that much, and what's been sold in country is sold for a fraction of that amount? It defies logic. But the conservative nature of many Gambians are scared of disruptive actions. And our cash crop or cash crops in this country needs severe disruption. People have been talking about cashew. I'm against cashew once again. It's a crop that's not good for the soil because of its highly acidic nature. Today, North Bank near me has been used as a cashew hub. but the soil around Northland has adversely been affected over the past 15 to 25 years because of cashews. So like I said, I am a macroeconomist. When I look at things, I look at the good side of it, the downside of it, and I look at the net benefit to society in the medium to long term. Then I consider it something good or something not good.
Thank you. So what do you think about smart cryptos?
Yeah, I think Brother Nyang has said it all. Obviously, I don't know. He spoke about. He's talking about some of those examples that he gave. I don't know what, in terms of our cultural settings, I don't know how that is going to all go well with production of
he said we use generic produce marijuana.
yeah, that's I know what he said, but when it comes to that, it's a good example. I think it's a matter of, again, Nyang has said, all this discussion since we started the program, HIRI, we know of problems and we have the solutions, but obviously there's a disconnect between the policy makers and those that have the powers that be to implement those policies. We should be able to fix our problems, because all these ideas that he's proposing here can't work without those who are who need to execute those policies have the political will to be able to do it. We can talk here until cows come home. Like we have a lot of brilliant, accountants, economists, people who study business models and all that from independence, a lot of smart Gambians. And that's cut across all sectors. It's not peculiar to the field of economics. If you go to the field of the law, we have a lot of intelligent, people. But when you go to the Ministry of Justice and everything, look at the performance. So I think for me, to cut the discussion short, we need to have, and we don't want to bring politics into this, but I think this is why we say we need to have those with political will. Look, I give a good example of Burkina Faso. Even though the man who is there is not democratically elected, but look at that, he's now established tomato processing plants in Burkina. And Gambia, since independence, we don't even have one single tomato processing plant in our country. What sort of light industries do we have here in that country? We should be able to have mango juice processing. We have a lot of mangoes. In the mango season, you go to Gambia, you go to Sandaga in Gambia, you see a lot of mangoes lying everywhere. We are losing out. Suppose somebody look, when I was at the ministry, we had a British investor here who came to visit us. This British investor wanted to invest in Gambia, establish an ice cream processing plant. We import our ice cream, everything, and this guy came, I want to process some plant that can supply the region. And he thinks that Gambia would be a good hub for us. And he came with his project proposals and in terms of what number of people, because at the ministry, we have got the investment unit, which appraises all projects. Like you come with your project, we appraise it to see how the Gambian economy will be valued. And you benefit what they call duty waiver. I think Njie knows there is a finance approved the duty waiver. And when you come with HIRI, you want to invest into this, then we appreciate a proposal and we recommend to the Minister of Trade. And then when we have to convince him by assessing that project to say this is going to be beneficial to the Gambian economy in terms of not only income that they pay, but also in terms of tax revenue we're going to get, but also in terms of employment. But most of the time we look at the fundamentals, like in terms of how many Gambians are going to be employed from this investor, because we want to increase, job creation. That is saying, and because that person meet the threshold, we recommend it to the Minister of Finance. But because of the bureaucracies, a lot of bureaucracies, even though we said we're going to bring one-stop shop, GIPSA is supposed to be one-stop shop where investors can just go there, do all the paperwork and everything. But can you imagine, HIRI, we lost out. That investor ended up going to Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, because he was frustrated, because the complaint he said to us when he returned to the UK, he sent an email to us saying, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to invest in Gambia. And he gave lot of reasons. One of the reasons, is sad. He said when he went to customs, and these are allegations, and they were asking for kickbacks. They frustrated the guy. Every department they go, he has to put something on the table before they will even look at his paperwork. And this guy said, I'm coming here to help your country. I want to invest, employ Gambians. I want to contribute to your economy. But he was so frustrated that instead of getting everything together, he was just made to go around from one department to another. And everywhere, somebody would be asking, how much can I get out of this deal? So I'm sure he may be facing this. He might have faced the same problem in Cote d'Ivoire, because Africa, the differences are not that great. But then he was able to move his investment to Cote d'Ivoire. I don't know how he got it, but these are some of the things that we have. And I think we have the fundamentals, the ideas, but it's how to implement these issues. And those are some of the constraints that we have. We have to get a government that will be a good listener to the policy experts. And for this previous government, I cannot see the paradigm shift yet. I don't know, maybe we will have another government, because we continuously rely on World Bank and IMF and these loans and taking loans. They are not going to solve our problem. We cannot outsource our development, HIRI. We cannot outsource our development. We cannot rely on these Western countries and the Bretton Woods institution to solve our economic problem we have. Now, I have listened to Honorable Halifa Saleh, even though I'm not part of DOI, and they have brilliantly explained this. We have natural resource, River Gambia. We can rely on our natural resources to be able to create things and start development from within. You have to start development from within. Look, Taiwan, the Asian model, Singapore and other countries, they didn't rely on the West to transform their economies. They started within, and that's how they succeeded. They didn't rely on UK and America to be pumping money here and there. They were called inward-looking development. You're going to have, ours is outward-looking development. Gambia is trying to do outward-looking development. From independence today, I thought every new government that comes into power will change, but so far we haven't seen anything. So just to cut the story short on that, the smart thing is a good idea, but how to implement it, it is the Achilles heel for Gambia. And that is the thing. Okay?
Yeah. And by the way, Saidily,
yeah,
I don't know whether you recall, there was a dairy pilot project in Dankunku.
True.
That was to make milk, butter, and ice cream.
True.
It's very sad. Gambia in the 70s was more industrialized than Gambia of today.
Mm-hmm.
Industrialized.
Yeah.
GPMB, they were creating plywood.
True.
Fire bricks. We call it fire bricks, charcoal. We were creating red bricks out of, I forgot the name of that place, Flamingo. It's a Spanish company, terracotta. They were doing fire bricks. We were doing oil. We were doing groundnut cake. We were producing tiles. There was a company in Gambia producing tiles. Babaro. We were producing nails. Plastics with Sankung Sila. Beverages. What do we have today? Nothing. Why? Because the administrative hurdles, the energy inconsistency and pricing, and level of corruption, and access to reliable, sustainable raw materials have killed the cottage industries that were thriving and booming in the Gambia in the 70s to the 80s. Yeah. You look at GRT, Gambia River Transport. We used to make our barges, these metal barges. They were made in the Gambia. They're all gone. So one thing that has happened, and it started during the ERP, but Jammeh really put the nail on the coffin. And all of these things are gone. I mean, I can name you 16 to 20 initiatives. We used to have Gambia Tannery. We used to make leather, ship it to Italy for BMW and Mercedes. And the leather was coated with blue dye. Gambian leather, exported. And these were companies owned by government. The company was called Gambia Tannery. All these are dead. And that's why our export figures were good. Because in aggregate terms, we were exporting a little bit of a whole lot of things. Today, we're not. Even charcoal at one point was exported out of Gambia to Gran Canaria. It's not a sustainable thing to do. These shells that we take from our oysters and pine, it serves a good use for agricultural. It has a high level of calcium and phosphorus. It's piling up and no one's using it. That's money sleeping. My take is, if I were to be given a chance, the Ministry of Finance will look at government's operation as a balance sheet, but a virtual live balance sheet that changes day in, day out. Inflow of revenue, outflow of expenditures, fixed assets, movable assets, and we can leverage. Today, the Banjul-Serekunda Highway can be taken to a bank for money. It's an asset. There are so many assets that this government has, we can use it to raise funds. It's very sad. We have never valued the asset base, the fixed asset base of this country. I spent $10 million to build a road. Why won't I get a valuator to value that road? There are a lot of things we can monetize. I'm not talking about selling them, leveraging them to get cash to expand on development, rather than just going to the central bank and using T-bills to expand on development.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is HIRI Media coming to you live on TikTok. We're having a great conversation tonight. We're looking at the Gambia's trade in focus. We have Mr. Njie, thank you for joining us, and Saidily of UDP Online Bantawa. Of course, Mike Bunkers, my co-host in the house. I would like to thank all our viewers for joining us tonight, or today, or this morning, wherever you are. And for those who are gifting as well, thank you for elevating and liking this live. We have 83,000 likes, and that is very good. And we want to take this opportunity to thank all those who are liking and sharing this live and giving and gifting. Looks like Mike Bunkers has a question, right?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in terms of trade facilitations, when was the last time, if we have looked into simplifying, do some simplifications or modernization or harmonize to bring these things together? Because this seems to be multiple issues that somehow and doesn't seem to be talking to one another. When we can bring them together.
One-stop shop approach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One-stop shop. If I want to register a company, from the Ministry of Justice to GRA, it's called a single window.
Yeah, single window.
They've created a single window. I don't know how effective the single window is. But the biggest problem I've seen was GumTaxNet. GumTaxNet is where TIN numbers were generated. A TIN number should be from cradle to grave for a business or an individual, just like your Social Security in America. But sadly, today a trader will owe monies to customs and will go and get a new TIN number to trade whilst he's owing money. It means something is fundamentally wrong with the system. So GumTaxNet needs more work, and we need to really work on the database to ensure that duplications are not there and people will not metamorphosize themselves into new entities just to offload their liabilities, especially public liability.
Yeah, Mike, I wonder whether you're talking about the domestic trade facilitation or
Yes.
International trade, because there are two components here, the international trade facilitation and also domestic trade facilitation. Nyang reference to the issue of the one-stop shop that I was talking about. But yes, the Gambia have this one-stop shop, but how effective it is, that's the million-dollar question. But it's a great idea to have one-stop shop because it's so appealing to the investors. If you want to invest in a country, you just want to have everything done at one point. You don't want to be, moving around from one department, one place, and that's the bureaucratic process that we face with. But in terms of the international trade facilitation, that's why countries come up with trade agreements. Okay, Gambia has got a trade agreement with Tunisia, I think, recently. And we also have got trade agreements with bilateral, and this is bilateral because we do negotiate bilaterally with trade agreement with Senegal under the Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat. We have this trade agreements, with different countries, and this is where we try to get most favored treatment in terms of our goods attracting, and it's all aimed at enhancing our exports. And they do this bilaterally at a point. Countries, even though ECOWAS one is there, so we target, because our trade agreement with ECOWAS is there already, because we're part of ECOWAS bloc. So what we do is go outside the ECOWAS zone, like I referenced. I think I don't know which year that we had with Tunisia, but it's pretty recent with the government of Tunisia. They signed it, and these are things. But how much do we trade with Tunisia? Tunisia is not one of our top destinations. Our top destinations is our export is China, India. You talk of Senegal, Mali, South Korea, some of these countries, United Kingdom, we in terms of the levels, but Gambia trades more. So I don't know what the interest we had to go to have trade agreement with Tunisia, because it's not among our top 5, countries. So
it's becoming a good one.
Okay.
Because construction is booming, and there is a product called plata.
Okay.
That's what they use to make gypsum ceilings.
Okay. Probably that's the rationale behind it. But when I was at the local, there are also other instruments like trade exhibitions, yes, and trade fairs. People will hear trade fairs because it's all aimed at having our exporters, particularly our local producers, to be able to penetrate other markets. You go to a trade exhibition. Senegal used to have an international trade fair every 2 years. I don't know whether that's still going on. Yes. Yeah. And when you go there, when you go to Dakar, that trade fair is one of the best. I used to enjoy going to those trade exhibitions, but you see variety of people, and investors even used to come from Europe to go there, not only Africa. So Gambia and there used to be one in Johannesburg, South Africa. So different countries used to have trade exhibition, international trade fairs. So those are some of the instruments that we use to enhance trade facilitation at local level. But again, the constraints that we alluded to earlier is proven to be a challenge, even in terms of that international trade facilitation. Thank you.
Yeah, because if we look at these trade facilitations and some of the emphasis around transparency, efficiency, and cooperation, which you pretty much talked about, there is no coherent, clear policies like as an investor, if you arrive in the Gambia, where you can go to and say, okay, this is the import-export transit procedures that are required upfront, that, is self-taught and less bureaucracy.
It's a bureaucracy, yeah.
It's GAIPA.
Yeah, GAIPA, I said that before.
We have GAIPA, but the biggest problem in terms of international trade facilitation, for me, is the weakening of our Chamber of Commerce over the years. If you happen to come to the Gambia and you go to the trade fair, you will see a Malian leather craftsman, a Senegalese chew rice seller. You will not see light and major industries coming, because the Chamber of Commerce, what it was in the 80s and early 90s in the Gambia, is not the same as what it is today. The membership, in the past, when you talk about Gambia Chamber of Commerce, you had industries backing it. Today, you talk about Gambia Chamber of Commerce, you have the GSM companies backing it. GSM companies cannot further international trade unless them buying their reusable items and sometimes buying capital items. But I'm talking about people who drive industry. In the Gambia today, we don't have giants of industry. Sankung Sila was the last Mohican when it comes to industrialization in the Gambia. I'm sorry to say. I'm yet to see a thriving industry. I'm not talking about cottage, but the scope and size of Sankung Sila, soap, plastics, and other materials, it's no longer. We don't have the likes of Sankung Sila operating at that scope anymore in this country. Well, I'm yet to see one in recent days.
But this is a different question altogether. But if we look at the Gambia today, what would you say is holding people back Governance.
Right. Governance is one.
No, primary. You know why?
Yeah.
Investors, they like fluids.
Mm-hmm.
They flow and move to where there are least encumbrances to trade and their existence in that place. So investors don't love a country, they love a return. If you facilitate for them to have a good return, they will stay. If they're not seeing that like a briefcase, they will tactically move out. And that's why there is no Fortune 500 company in the Gambia.
No.
No, none, zero.
Yeah.
That's serious. There is no globally recognized. When I say this, someone tell me, oh, BP was here. BP never, they were trying to explore. But there is no Fortune 500 company operating out of the Gambia. The last one was Shell and Standard Chartered, maybe. And Standard Chartered is gone.
It's gone, yeah.
So
Yeah, it's gone.
imagine a whole country with no Fortune 500 company. I'm not talking about 1 or 100 companies. 500 of the top companies in the world not having footprint in your country. Today I go to Dakar, Pfizer, IBM, Facebook, Google. I can name you nothing less than 60 Fortune 500 companies operating out of Dakar. SmithKline Beecham, Arthur Anderson, they're all in Dakar. So therefore, governance is our problem.
Yeah, but Mr. Njie, I agree with you. But another thing is we've lost our competitiveness, basically. If you look at it, investors, because these are businessmen or women, they want to invest their resources. They want returns. Okay, they are not charitable to come and invest the country. They want to see meaningful returns. And what they look at is they look at the country. Like, we have internal issues. You spoke about governance, and maybe it's just all part of governance. But if you look at the cost of energy,
yes,
reliable electricity supply, any investor wants to have that top notch, because
these all revolves around governance.
yes, what I'm saying, it all revolves around governance.
So procurement loopholes are all
Exactly. But you look at
has good laws, but has bad application of our laws. But also, say another area that really helps in trade is education and skill
ability, and that is the labor side of it. Okay, you want young, skilled people to be able to attract. So these are the things. Yes, you're right. It's all under the umbrella of governance. We can try to narrow it down to the specifics, and that's why I was looking about the issue of electricity supply, because any meaningful investor, and the example I referenced about that investor from the UK, I remember that was some of the reasons that Gambia doesn't have a reliable electricity supply. When he went to Ivory Coast, they have a stable electricity supply. So he looked at both countries and said, Ivory Coast, number one, has a bigger market because they are more populated than Gambia. So in terms of the supply, they're able to supply. The market is bigger, but also Ivory Coast at the time, when you go to Abidjan, I don't know now, because I've not been there for a long time, but the time I went to Abidjan, the electricity supply was perfect compared to Gambia. And when we used to have GUC, MSG, and Kamaj was still there. You know, the Kamaj we are experiencing now. So this has always been there. So, but I think the key word is governance, Mike, like Nyang said.
But also a country, you have to be deliberate in your actions. If Gambia wants trade, inflow of trade into the Gambia and investments, we need to have a revisit of the labor market. Today, every student leaving the University of Gambia is a development studies graduate. Development studies don't grow the economy. Everyone is a lawyer. That's not what the labor market is demanding. Gambia has a high incidence of unemployment because we have a mismatch of the demand need of the labor market and the supply need of the labor market.
Yeah.
And government must be aligned to meet the needs of the labor market by producing what the labor market demands. The labor market in the Gambia is looking for more electricians, more welders, more plumbers, more tilers, more masons, more refrigerator technicians, etc., etc. But no, that's not what we're producing. We're producing quote-unquote white-collar jobs that are redundant in today's global economy. So most of the degrees we're giving to students are redundant degrees. China in 1 year phased out 500 degrees in academia because the economy no longer supports that, and that's not what the economy needs. The Gambian economy, we are a primary economy. So we need skilled labor more than this. Not to say we don't need this, but what we need more, hands-on labor. And the culture in this country shuns handiwork. So we cannot fix the misaligned labor supply constraints if we are not to inculcate skill at the grade level in terms of acquisition, promotion, and facilitation so that the labor market can thrive.
So I want to ask a personal question to both of you.
Sorry, let me just follow this up a bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I suppose governance sits at the top. But in terms of trade authorizations or trade access to capital, because one of the challenges Gambia have is, let's say you are a businessman and you want to set up in the Gambia. You think of when you import stuff, you think of paying import duties and whatnot. And in terms of cash flow wise and many other things, what can Gambia government or through GRA can do to support some of this business in terms of their cash flow issues, allow them to import and pay later, or certain types of customs authorizations where this can encourage people to come into the space and create some of these industries that needs your capital.
Mike, everything revolves around governance. Today, you are talking about access to finance. There is a severe crowding out of this economy, meaning the government is competing for resources with the private sector for funding. And banks, they're risk averse, so they park their monies into treasury bills, thereby making those funds sterile. Today, if the government was not borrowing heavily within the domestic market, banks will be forced to mitigate their risk and give monies to people. But today, government is giving them what you call risk-free investment. Why would I worry about giving money to Saihou and him defaulting when government can give me an IOU with a promise to pay on time? So, and all of these are happening because our governance architecture is weak. We have poor fiscal discipline. We have fiscal expansion. That's why Barrow is building roads left, center, and right. We have poor procurement, value for money. So governance is driving everything that is bad. We can pinpoint it and narrow it down to all these things you've said and Saihou have said. But at the end of the day, the apex deficiency and malice is governance, without which governance is the railroad and everything rides on that railroad. If there is no railroad, the train will not have tracks.
All right, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great. It all revolves around this crowding out effect that Njie alluded to, and it's all because of the deficit financing. Fiscal side needs to be controlled. Fiscal discipline is key. If you tend to spend more than you earn, obviously you have the huge deficit, and people think that we borrow only externally. We do borrow locally. We do borrow.
And that's the problem of the economy.
Yeah.
Our external debt.
Yeah.
Internal debt.
Yeah,
internal debt is even more of a challenge right now because of the issue of treasury bills. The government try to, sell treasury bills and to finance, and particularly when you have a government that is fixated on the political part. I want to build roads. I want to say our Gambian voters can say, oh, Barrow is constructing roads, but at what cost? Some of these people who support Barrow I wish they will take a little time to look at the impact of this deficit financing. But for them, they don't care. They all see is, oh, baro sampano tali, baro esilo don kunyele. At what cost? And I am so worried about that deficit financing because it's crazy. And this is why it's, look, when you, deficit financing has negative consequences even for a Dalasi. That's what people don't know, because it put pressure on the interest rates, and the interest rates have got correlation. There's a correlation between interest rates and the local currency. The Dalasi will continue to dwindle, it will lose value, and it is going to put pressure. So you see, the economy has got a lot of connections. One part is that part B is having issues. Yeah, favorably. It's just like the human body.
But that's why we have equilibrium.
Yeah, that is the thing, Nyang. If one part of your body, and that's why it's having, you don't go to the doctor to solve it. It's going to circulate in the body. This is the consequential spiral effect on our economy. This is deficit financing that we are doing. Interest rates is affected. High interest rates, inflation goes up, the Dalasi goes weaker, and our import bill goes, and the balance of payment situation get more and more serious. And this is why we are in this vicious circle. As a country, we are in this vicious circle. We still cannot put our head around this. And sometimes it's so frustrating. It's not rocket science, like Njie said. It's not rocket science. It's just for people at the top to put their foot on the brake and say, look, let's reduce the spending. I read on Watson Gambia the other day. I don't know how true it is. The new Auditor General bought brand new cars for his 2 deputies, 3 million each. For what? For what? It's so a tiny country that goes out to borrow, but you're spending so much on vehicles, buying brand new cars. What we need to have a finance minister who is disciplined. Yeah, yes, that's true. But if you look at it, yeah, but yeah, vehicle is obviously I think the petroleum number 1 and number 2 is rice. I think cars is number 3. Okay, it goes in that right. Vehicles goes number 3. But it does, the whole issue is we have to deal with this situation, this menace of spending. And Sidi Keita, when he was brought in, there was a lot of hope that he is going to put his hand on this fiscal discipline. But for some reason, no, he doesn't get. We have to get a good finance minister. He cannot do it alone, but he has to be the main driver to make sure, okay, let's tackle this. Look, Mike, you live in the UK. You remember when the Conservative government came to power, our expenditure was bloating, even United Kingdom. You know, particularly that was the time the UK was so much involved in the Afghanistan war. So our expenditure, the defense budget was high. But when the Conservative government came in, David Cameron had to deal with this head on, to cut. People in the UK were frustrated, particularly those on benefits. They said, oh, we are not used to this. Because there are some people here, single moms, they pay their houses for them. They give them every week child tax credit. You go every Friday, you put your ATM in the bank, you see, oh, they have given you money. And David Cameron's government say, you know what, we have in a crisis situation. Yes, we are an industrialized nation, but we cannot continue to spend like this. And they had to put their foot on the brake and reduce the cuts.
Yeah, they introduced
austerity measures, you remember. And people in the United Kingdom were frustrated. There was a lot of complaints. Oh, we shouldn't have voted for this government. But later on down the line, they reap the benefits. That time, for those in the UK, you remember, even to get a job when you're an immigrant to come here was a problem because it had impact. But later on, when the economy started going grow and they dealt with the expenditure side of things, then the economy started growing and job creation started happening, and they realized, oh, this was what the chancellor was trying to do. And sometimes you have to deal with this. So I hope when we have a new government, whoever is going to be the finance minister would be somebody who will be disciplined. Maybe we can have Njie as our finance minister.
I prefer to be an advisor than a minister.
You've been offered.
I'm not interested. I can be a good advisor to a president or a minister because I'm not into the politics of cabinet, but I can be a last resort for proposals that come to your table.
Yeah.
No, I think also, Saihou, you mentioned something very interesting because the reason I'm pushing on this, if you talk to so many businesses in the Gambia, some of their problems is to do with cost. right? Business cost, right? Not just the usual rents and stuff like that, but cost in terms of import duty and others. And if you look at countries like the UK or EU, where they have this several different types of trade authorizations where you can bring in stuff, have it suspended in a bonded customs warehouse. You don't get to pay duty on it until you start selling it. Try to give, that physical or cash flow space to individuals, or where you can, in fact, make payment the following month or after several, after your goods have already arrived. So are these things available in the Gambia to importers?
Yes, they are. And this is what we were talking about earlier, having the letters of credit, because some of the commercial banks will look the way the international
because these are not facilitated through commercial banks, but rather through the tax authority itself. But are they available to the Gambia, let's say Batimat or Shortcut or some of these big shops can bring in stuff, suspended in the bonded customs warehouse, where they are not forced to immediately forward payment, or individuals with very good business structures, just to give them that cash flow space.
But they have direct delivery.
Yeah.
You have two things: direct delivery, like vehicles. People who bring cars, they get direct delivery. Their number plates are called GD. So you leave your car in your showroom. Once it's sold, you take the entry and pay for it. And some of these people, they have direct delivery and 90-day direct delivery, 120-day direct. They're arrangements.
Right. So is that something that needs expanding to the wider?
No, I think that's not the problem. The problem is not, look, commercial people, you need to understand one thing. In the Gambia, you have people who buy and sell. So sometimes what they are selling, they've already sold it prior to arrival, or they have collected advance payments on it. So paying customs is not a headache for them. The people who have those issues are people who are trying to industrialize. They have capital goods coming in, heavy capital goods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the level that you are talking about, which is not really peculiar to our situation.
Yeah, but he was talking about the Batimats and others.
Yeah.
Sellers. They're selling.
Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing. People selling materials in Gambia don't have a problem because they do transfer pricing. Whatever is passed on to them is passed on to the ultimate end user through the chain. The people that are having issues in the Gambia are people who are trying to transform, value add, and process. Those people are constrained because imagine buying a heavy capital item, bring it, and the item is dutiable, or you don't have what you call a concession, a duty-free, duty waiver. So those are the people facing problems, but not importers of commodities.
So in that respect, then, would you think? In terms of one of the tools that customs use, for example, let's say in wood processing, right? You bring in that machinery to produce something, which at the end of the day you sell into the public. And that allows that duty suspension. And
well, you need to understand, customs or GRA is an enforcing body.
Yeah.
So Ministry of Trade, through the Ministry of Finance, can request for certain concessions. And Ministry of Finance will extend the instructions to GRA to execute. But GRA is nothing but a collection body. Someone else manages them. And who's managing it? Ministry of Finance. The Sales and Income Tax Act, which established GRA, they have turned them into the collection body. But the collection body happens to have a policy body. And that policy body is the Gambia government negotiates with the IMF on taxes that will be collected in the year, and GRA only executes.
Yeah, but
they don't tell government, I'm going to collect $10 billion for you. No, they are giving a resource envelope.
Yeah,
that's why we change rates in certain goods. But one thing that I think the government needs to do is to look at solar, how to zero rate solar and batteries. Why? We have a capacity constraint. If I want to buy solar and battery and go off grid, the government must incentivize me so that I stop being a burden to the national grid. So computers, solars, batteries, and few other items, government need to zero rate it. Zero. Like rice, I don't think rice is a zero.
Yeah, rice is zero rated. Is zero rated.
Yeah, so I think it has a 5% ECOWAS.
Oh, that's the ECOWAS levy. That's the ECOWAS levy.
Yeah, 0.5%.
Yeah, is it?
Processing and levy.
Yeah, that's the ECOWAS levy. Yeah, yeah.
The duty comes from the Basel tariff.
Yeah, but Mike, again, for me, I don't see much. I think we also have to approach this carefully, because Gambia is a tax-based economy, highly tax-based economy. I think the focus and the attention should be capital equipments. If you are importing capital equipments, that, for example, you want to bring an industry, establish an industry, like the late Shankunsela, I remember, used to get benefit a lot of duty waiver. When he used to import certain raw materials from Nigeria or other places, he used to come to our ministry and we will give him approval, and finance will just give him the duty waiver exemption, because that is an industry that is so useful to the country. But if for these importers of basic stuff, we also have to find a balance where we should be very careful giving them this, because you look at the rice situation, HIRI. Mike, what sort of benefit has it got for Gambians? The rice is zero rated. Has it brought the price of bag of rice down? The only benefit.
Sekou, I was actually alluding to likes of Shankunsela.
Oh, okay.
That kind of business.
Oh, okay, then we are on the same page. Yeah.
Whereby, if someone imports certain types of raw materials, zero rated or in a suspended customs environment, but if they made it into something else, which end up attracting zero duty.
But that facility has always been there. It's always been there at the Ministry of Finance in terms of we have but I don't know how far it is now. It used to be there. I don't know what level they are at the moment, but that's always been.
There's also an abuse.
Yes, abuse, that's true. That's a different situation.
I don't like to mention names.
Yeah.
The word processing has been prostituted in the Gambia. You look at a jar oil.
Yeah.
They'll go and buy bulk cement. And the only thing they do is put it in paper bags, weigh it, and put it in a paper bag.
That's not processing.
You give them concession.
Yeah.
That's not an industry.
Yeah. That's more of packaging. You just.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But they're enjoying concessions that they should otherwise not enjoy, if you ask me.
Yes. I am with you on that. And a lot of people are abusing that. Yeah.
And add some more additives and turn it into cement, even if it's 15%.
Yeah.
I see the need for them to be incentivized, but we're incentivizing processing companies.
Yeah.
Or packaging companies.
Packaging is more packaging. Yeah.
That's all he does. You bring the bulk cement, put it in trucks from the port, take it to your silos, have a bagging machine, bag it, and sell it, and yet still you enjoy concession. That's fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
Okay, HIRI, do you want to come back?
Yeah. I mean, it's been over 2 hours having this gentleman here talking about the economy. And obviously, we have a lot of our following, people in the comment section that probably have questions as well, or maybe contributions. At HIRI Media, we're also attempting to bring, cabinet ministers out here to hold them accountable, to clarify some claims made by some of our guests, sometimes, especially. So we will open up and invite some of our, people in the comment sections, if you guys allow us, Mr. Njie and Saidily, to come in, and maybe we'll limit this, or we want to give people the opportunity to come in and maybe ask questions or maybe make comments. But I'll ask my final question to both of you, and then you can include that and package that into some sort of like your concluding statement as to our economy today and the future of our economy as well. But if you became, let's say, Geico's CEO for 1 year, what would be your first sales pitch to international investors? For Saihou and Mr. Njie. Saihou, you can go first.
Okay, that is an interesting question. For me, obviously, the environment have to be created to be able to make sure you convince whatever speech that you're going to say, because our aim would be to attract a lot of investors. Like you say, GAIPA, Gambia Investment Promotion Authority, you want to attract investors to come and see. So first of all, you have to look at the legislative arm of it, things, and to make sure you address those things. And also the institutional weaknesses will have to be addressed. And this is something under the present situation. You are the chief executive officer. You want to say Gambia is an attractive destination for you to come and invest. But we spoke about this earlier. You have the governance issues and all these things. If they're addressed, or we are on the roadmap to addressing them, then you can probably be in a position to work in tandem with the Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Finance, and then maybe go around, adventuring on the mission to bring investors to the country. But we have to tackle governance issues. We have to look at our tax models to make sure they are good, because government's role pretty much is to provide conducive environment. Government is not out there to create businesses. That's one thing. Government's role is to provide good tax regime. You deal with the tax regime, and also all these issues that we spoke about, electricity and all that. So once you are able to deal with those situations, then obviously you are in a position to say, okay, come and invest in my country, and you make sure the investors get the best, treatment when they come. The timely allocation. And also we haven't spoken much about our ports, the ports in terms of the maritime efficiency. We just look at it, but this is all interrelated into one. So you have to try and deal with all the situations as an investor, but also the issues that we spoke about earlier, because all this thing is to try to, attract investors and also create market environment to be able to make sure that this businessmen, when they come into the country, number one, they easily establish their businesses, and also they're able to enhance their supply side. So once we deal with this, it's not easy right now under the current situation with all these governance challenges to be the CEO of GAIPA, because you are dealing with such a mess. And at that situation, you need the politicians and the political will to, for example, lead us and try to probably soften up, and we address some of these things. So I am just going into that because at the end of the day, the GAIPA, I don't think they are performing well right now in terms of attracting investors. And your job will be to attract investors. But you cannot deal with this situation, HIRI, without actually dealing with all these constraints that we have, at least on the road to deal with them.
Okay, Saihou. And any closing remarks, Saihou, before I bring in other people to come and ask questions as well?
No, it's
before they have closing remarks, I was going to ask them about economic restructuring, whether they have any recommendations, if that's possible.
Yes. I think it depending on the timing, we would ask them if they could answer that question as well. But then let's jump to Mr. Njie and have him give us if he has any business pitch. What would be your pitch to investors internationally? If, for example, I'm not offering you the position. Let's say you become the CEO of GAIPA for the next 1 year. How would you sell the Gambia? What would be your business pitch to international investors who may be watching?
First, the Gambia needs to differentiate a briefcase investor and a bona fide international investor. A briefcase investor is someone who wants to use the country as a leverage to raise money rather than bring in money. But for GAIPA to be successful, the government, well, the executive, the president to be precise, need to do away with the investment advisor at the State House. The State House should not be a conduit for investors. Investors should stop at GAIPA, and the GAIPA Act should protect the investors and facilitate the needs of the investors. Today, I can safely say that GAIPA is competing with State House for access to investors. Whenever an investor wants to go and see a president, you know that that investor is looking for a sweet deal. If you have your money, you have your good business plan, all you need is good laws to protect you, and you roll out. But anyone who's trying to see powers that be is looking for favors and will otherwise do things that are not to the interest of the greater good. So the first step is for government, central government, to be precise, the office of the president, to divorce themselves from interacting with investors and allow GAIPA to be what the law set out GAIPA to be. Then, the chief executive officer of GAIPA is the chief salesman for investment in the Gambia, and that has two roles. One is to pitch outside the country. Two is to facilitate within the country once they get here. Doing that will make GAIPA effective. Doing that will make GAIPA bring in results. And doing that will make investments flow in the country. But you open any web page, you open GR test. Today, this investor went to see the president. It's not the president's job to interact with investors, for crying out loud. But basically, the office of the president is competing with GAIPA. And at the end, they want GAIPA to do the tail end, formalize this arrangement. When GAIPA was supposed to screen, when GAIPA was supposed to assess, when GAIPA was supposed to advise, and now GAIPA is just coming to do paperwork. So they have ineffectively made GAIPA redundant on what their role should have been in facilitating investments and monitoring investments. Thank you.
So pretty much we have lobbyists, lobbying culture, in other words, at state.
Well, the lobbyists are on the private side. On the public side, we have public officials doing jobs that are not their job, interacting with investors. The law specifically said that GAIPA is the gateway for investments. That's the only door we have opened by law to interact with international investors. So why should they go to the State House?
Okay, so for my final question, and thank you to both of you for coming. So if either of you are given the opportunity to become the next Minister of Finance, and you are given the task to restructure the Gambian economy for the next century, from a customs and trade or economic development perspective, what 5 key priority areas that you will look into, that you think, if they are properly restructured, can revive the Gambian economy?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bill Clinton once said, if you ain't broke, don't fix it. The Gambian economy is broken to the core. It's rotten to the core. It's dysfunctional to the core. It has missed opportunities, and it's in dire need of restructuring. The first in restructuring is called fiscal consolidation. And in fiscal consolidation, what do? You kill fiscal dominance. Fiscal dominance is expansion, and it's expansion that is killing this country, where spending is outpacing revenue collection.
Yes.
Now, how do you tame expenditures? You tame expenditures by first creating what you call a debt legislation. And debt legislation, meaning you go to the parliament, pass a law that says the government of the Gambia, internationally or locally, cannot borrow more than 10% of its previous year's budget. So you have tamed and tied the hands of government to streamline borrowing within a framework that is legal, not discretion, legal. The second thing that needs to be done is for government to put a balance sheet and have a balance sheet of its assets and liabilities on a continuous basis, day in, day out. The close of each day, like banks close their books, businesses close their books. The government must be closing their books in real time. Government must be made real time. We know government's outstanding liabilities and government's inflows on a day-to-day basis. Thirdly, we need to rationalize expenditure in the daily running of government. You have to understand, governments are set up to provide services, public services. But today, if the cost of providing public services, for every $1 you put in the economy for services, is costing you, let's say, 45, 60 putus to just give that service, there's a problem. So it means the cost for the delivery of the service is more than the value of the service provided. So fundamentally, fiscal discipline will come through consolidation, rationalization, and also legislative changes to create debt legislations, a debt ceiling. These are key to any reform that will make this economy have a U-turn. Thank you.
Thank you. And Saihou, you can...
Well, I think the question you asked is pretty much since we started the program. These are some of the areas that we've been talking about. Obviously, any finance minister you want to deal with the Gambia situation will have to deal with the, number one, the fiscal side of issues. We spoke about a lot today in terms of expenditure. You have to be serious. And I said it earlier, you have to be bold. You have to be bold to say no to wasteful spendings. Right now, we have a lot of wasteful spendings. And you have to prioritize the expenditure of the government in terms of what the needs are. And this is, okay, it's good to know, but it also needs organizational restructuring of the whole government. Because, like, for example, for me, the Gambia government, this big government scenario that we have, you know, how many cabinet ministers positions that we have, Mike, we need to have a small government. I'm a big fan of a small government situation, and that is all correlated. Like you have to do alignment of some of the ministries. We don't need to have a Ministry of Information out there on its own. We have the spokesperson. We have this. We can amalgamate some of this department into one and cut expenditure, and that's it. The other issues, Sarah, it all correlated because the Minister of Finance. You remember we used to have finance and trade together. I don't know whether you remember that. It used to be Minister of Finance and Trade. Now they separated the two ministries. You have Minister of Trade on its own. And right now the finance minister is not in charge of all these trade issues, these trade agreements or whatever. And that created a problem for us in the sense that they are all trying to work on their own. So consequently, the finance minister's job is to try to deal with the fiscal side of it. The monetary policy side of it is the central bank, okay? And the trade policy is the Ministry of Trade. So these are all disjointed, all right? So as a finance minister, first of all, you have to sit down with all the stakeholders and try to integrate the policies together so that you have the thinking. So you try to have everything all on the same page. Your role as a finance minister to make sure that the economy is revived, okay? We try to deal with it, but you also have got the central bank that needs to deal with the monetary policy and try to deal with the issue of the inflation and all this. But the macroeconomic situation is all intertwined and all that. So as a finance minister, what you will do is particularly look at our situation and we try to reduce that deficit financing that we spoke about earlier. And through that, you work in collaboration with the ministry and some of the things that, and it's good that Mr. Njie pointed out the issue of the investment department at the office of the president, which is trying to actually, you know, they are now pretty much doing, and all the investors go to State House, you know what happens there. So all these things, and you reduce probably as if once you deal with the issue of the expenditure, you reduce the deficit financing, then that will in effect tackle the crowding out effect that we have in our investors. So this all needs to be restructured, but it needs the political will And I keep emphasizing that you cannot have implement all these ideas when you don't. You can be the best finance minister. You can be. I remember when Amadou Sane came in, he introduced the vehicle policy. You remember the vehicle policy? The vehicle policy was aimed at saving our economy 300 million. Okay, but the political will made it not work. And at the end of the day, we cannot have that progressive economy and trying to revitalize the economy. Again, I'm going to be a big fan of, I said something earlier on during this discussion. If I am finance minister today, I'll work with the Minister of Trade for us to revive the issue of the small scale, medium enterprises I said earlier, because those are the people that will revamp our economy to try to we export a little bit more and also reduces the pressure. But all these things is all intertwined in terms of the policy instruments that you're going to make sure that the crowding out effect is reduced. You introduce support to the small scale businessmen. As a good finance minister, you have to start all these policies in place. And once it can all go into this, we can restructure our debt and do organizational restructuring and all that. So for me, that's what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, the finance minister cannot work in solo or in isolation. Okay, it is and I said it's all revolving around governance. Once we are ready to solve the whole governance issue, the economy can work. We cannot attract investors. Come on, no matter what we do as a guy, you cannot attract investment if we don't deal with some of those issues. Like an investor will look at the returns, Michael. The investor doesn't want to come and invest in a country where you cannot obviously, deliver and address some of the challenges that we have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, both of you. Thank you for coming.
And do you guys have any final remarks, Mr. Njie?
Well, the Gambian economy is the lifeline of this country. Sadly, and this is very unfortunate, it has been on a slippery slope for the past 10 years. And it had a little bit of impetus in 2017, hoping it will take a U-turn. Unfortunately, the signals that it has been sending hasn't been promising, and the outcome has dragged more people below the poverty line than take them out of the poverty line. An economy cannot be managed through discretion and lack of transparency or lack thereof. So whichever government is coming next, even if Barrow were to win, he should understand that a country is just not a name. It's not people living in destitution. A country is a physical location with people who should be thriving. And Gambia, as small as it is with its resource constraints, it has what it takes to give Gambians a decent and meaningful livelihood whereby they will have access to education, access to opportunities, access to healthcare, and with the opportunity for them to make it in life. Gambians are not asking for handouts. Gambians are asking for government to create an environment where opportunities are availed and people take use of these opportunities once trained and once given a good healthcare system. So I do hope and I pray that whoever wants to take this country further, start looking that the economy is the lifeline of the country. Thank you so much.
Indeed, the economy is the lifeline of this country. Saihou, do you have any final remarks?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's been a brilliant discussion, very interactive. Yeah, I want our country, we want to transcend from the situation we are in and deal with the Gambia's economic situation that we are in. And again, we start looking inwardly. I'm going to emphasize that. We cannot outsource our development to external donors. We cannot outsource our development to the Bretton Woods institutions. We would have to deal with our own situation and be ready to change things. I think the last time I see outwardly development date back to the Masterland Plan of Action when United States helped Europe after the Second World War. They helped Europe to rebuild their industries. But those days are gone now. Now we will have to deal with our own situation. And amid all the policy ideas that we all stated here, try to revive our economy slowly, surely, and try to attract investors to come, deal with the issue of the energy crisis. I think that is key to attracting investors. And inadvertently, that will reduce the cost of the rising price of commodities. We haven't talked much about that today, but that is an issue with the rising cost of living in the world. Today, you talk to an average Gambian, and all over the world, even those of us in the Europe, cost of living crisis is a serious problem because you want your disposable income, okay, when you to have a good disposable income to be able to spend. But with the rising cost and all these wars going around, the crisis in Iran and the United States, the Ukraine war has already put a lot of pressure. As a government, what we need to do is to handle our situation with a lot of seriousness and not trying to be traveling from Banjul to Washington to try to collect cash, and get support from the IMF and then spend that money and then go back again and borrow more money. That's why our debt burden has got to 140 billion now that people are talking about, from 58 billion. Now is in the range of what, 140 billion? I don't know, because people give different figures.
Yeah, I think we can just say publicly what we know. Somewhere around 130 billion.
130 billion, okay. And you remember there's one situation during the OIC. We didn't talk about it when the government bought vehicles. Is it $150,000? And they bought 100 cars, 100 vehicles, just for people to come and stay 2 days and 3 days ago. That was wasteful. So we hope we'll have a situation where we will stop all this unnecessary spendings and deal with our fiscal side of the issues. And the monetary side of issues will take care of itself once we deal with the fiscal side of issues and we reduce the inflation, and that will have consequential effect on the price of commodities so that a Gambian can, and all these things will have, positive effects in terms of helping our health sector, agriculture sector, once we deal with the economy. So it's just going to be work in progress. But on that note, thank you guys for having us. And it's been a very interactive discussion. That's it. Thank you.
So Moro is going to deliver a vote of thanks on behalf of HIRI Media for you guys accepting our invitation. I think we're going to do this again. Like you said, Saihou, we cannot exhaust everything when it has to do with the economy. So we'll definitely do a part 2, inshallah. Moro, can you unmute your mic?
Yes. Thank you very much, HIRI Media. And of course, for our wonderful and distinguished panelists. And of course, my bunga, my nobody bunga compatriot. I'm sorry, Galia for you. But I want to thank, Uncle Saihou and of course, Uncle Njie for these wonderful deliberations. I think it has been a wonderful conversation for the past 2 hours, looking at where we are as a nation, where we come from, what used to happen, how we were good at what we are best, and then where we missed and where, why we are struggling. And I believe it's a conversation that we need to continue. And of course, it's a conversation that we also need to encourage at both political and, in political parties and after politics, because this is where the Gambia breathes. Because we all know as a nation, our source of income mainly, of course, is through taxation, tourism, and of course, the small trades that we do. And then I believe that having people who have served and work in this area would give at least credible information and meaningful incitements so that we can all look into this and, of course, raise some public awareness and, of course, political interest in ensuring that we're able to deliver for the Gambia. On that note, and of course, on behalf of HIRI Media, we would strongly and, of course, overwhelmingly thank Mr. Nyang and, of course, Saihou, Saidily of the UDP, of course, online Bantaba, and for according us this opportunity to learn from you guys, of course, to widen our horizon with regards to trade focus in the Gambia. And we wanted to also say that we don't want this to be the first and the last. We would continue engaging you, of course, continue putting questions. And then we would also want to thank the entire listeners, both in the Gambia and the diaspora, and for also being here with us for the past 2-3 hours. We encourage you to keep, continue listening to HIRI Media, because we bring you meaningful discussions and incitements, not only about politics, but about Gambian way of lives and what matters most to the Gambian people. So I would want to thank everybody for listening, and as well our panelists. I don't know where we are now here, but I think you said we were going to continue on the question and answers.
Yeah, so, thank you very much, Moro. Of course, the Nyang and being on the camera and sitting for 3 hours is a long time. I have 6 people that are requesting. I'm not sure if they have questions for our guests, but I would like to, I don't know if I can put my guest on spot to say, do you want to stay to see if there's 6 people that are requesting, if they have any questions?
3 questions.
Yeah, we can take some questions. Yeah.
So I'm gonna,
maybe say who will take 3.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pick 3. I'll pick 3, and then they can ask Nyang, and then let me see who is requesting. Okay,
no, I mean they can ask 3 to say who and 3 to me.
Okay, 3 to you.
Can I start each one before they come in? If it's possible.
Okay, Moro, go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much once again. For me, I think I am very particular about the MSCs in the Gambia, because as we know, Gambia has a very young economy and young populations. And of course, we are encouraging, judo fi, magge fi, rofi, mungo si Gambia, like, doing it in the Gambia. And we've seen some of the businesses that we have within the Gambia that are competing with Gambians, especially on the monetary side. Let's say Wave as an example, because I am very particular about Wave, how Wave has dominated in the Gambian economy. And we all know that Wave Gambia is tied to the CFA. So whatever value we trade in Wave, we are losing it to the CFA, which I believe technically is also devaluing our currency. So as an expert in this area, both Saihou and Nyang, how did the Gambian people and the Gambian government get to a point where Wave has actually dominated the entire country? They know the purchasing power of the ordinary Gambian people. They have our data, they have our information, and basically now they control the inflow and outflow of the ordinary Gambians, as per the, based on the fact that the trade that we use on our web platform, sending and receiving money, buying stuff online. So where does this keep the Gambian people?
Okay, I'll try first. I like fintech, and I like innovation, and I like banking to unbank. But where I have problem with Wave, like I said, I am a macroeconomist, so I just don't look at the bright side. I look at the dark side of things. When people make deposits in banks, banks tend to extend and lend out. So that money is something that will grow. When you and I put money in Wave, it is sterile. Sterile in the sense that I can make payments, but it's not growing, the money is not growing. So fundamentally, the very crowding out we've been saying with government, Wave is now crowding out the commercial banks, because Wave should not be a first point of deposit. If you go to Sweden, they have what you call Swish. You can take money from a bank account and put it into the Swish account, then you can make payments. But you can originate with Wave and terminate with Wave, thereby bypassing the primary financial architecture of the country, which are the banks. This happens to have an impact. And I am pretty sure end 2026, if anybody does a study on deposits and savings, you will see a dip, and that dip will be explained by the spike that Wave is enjoying today. Now, what are the consequences of that dip and spike? The dip at the commercial banks will mean that there is a drought for entrepreneurs to access money. The spike means there is growth in Wave, and this growth there is no reinvestment into the economy because it's a transactional business. So once the transaction is done and they've mopped up the liquidity that they collect as their commissions, it doesn't filter into the Gambian economy. It's exchanged and repatriated. So we need to have a look and make sure that the banks, to say that you can use Wave to make payments, but monies have to originate from a bank account into a Wave account, and you make onward payments to anyone and everything. But as it stands today, I can go to a Wave agent, buy $20,000 and make payments. That $20,000 will never see the light of day in any bank account. And that's not good for the Gambian economy.
Let me just come in. I think probably Wave model, I think probably the ease in which we can also use Wave, because you have an app on your phone, okay, with the advancement of technology right now, and it has actually made people feel very comfortable. Like, for example, for me, someone like me, I don't use Wave. I like to do most of my transactions through the banks, okay, got transaction. But for somebody who doesn't want to take that burden to go through Wave a bank transaction, you want to say, okay, I want to send money to somebody who urgently needs money in Gambia. Let me do it through Wave account, and they just, within a twinkle of an eye, they collect the money. So you look at the economy may be losing from this side of things, but also in terms of the ease in which somebody wants to do the transaction model, it is more of a tool that somebody would like to use and say, okay, I just want to send money. It's an emergency situation. It's how the government, for example, will have to look at this and say, okay, what risks are there in terms of our people, our remittances, most of it coming through Wave? And I think this is the role of the experts to look at it and come out with remedial measures to try to circumvent some of the losses to the economy in terms of us using it. Until that is done, obviously, a human being, you want something that is, user-friendly. That's the word. And Wave is user-friendly for a lot of people compared to other transactions. Like, in fact, during the conversation, I referenced the issue of AGOA, United States benefiting from that. And through that, you see Western Union, MoneyGram, FedEx, and all these things opening up in the country, But a lot of people want to work into, a MoneyGram shop and send money. Whereas today, tomorrow, you don't need to do that. You just sit in your house and do your transaction through Wave. But in the past, you have to go out and go to a MoneyGram shop you can do it through the phone for that, but most of the people will have to go and send money. But those are some of the variances that we have, and probably that's why we have seen influx of people using Wave.
Okay, I just have a quick comment on this, both Saihou and Nyang. But don't you think the fact that Wave was able to expand this rapidly in a very short period is to do with the commercial banks themselves? For example, if you need to withdraw from a bank or deposit to a bank, right, it takes you about, in some cases, even 30 minutes queuing just to access your account. And when it's month end or start of the month, it's usually a problem. If you visit some of these banks, the queue is all the way up to, parking lot. So these two, I think, the convenience that people enjoy through Wave.
That's what I was saying, the convenience.
Push people from commercial banks to Wave. And also, the other thing I want to ask, whether any of you know of it, because I've been asking this question, is these transaction fees that Wave charge, is HIRI able to charge an element of it, like a VAT or kind of a sales tax on it?
Yes.
Okay. Then we are not totally losing out.
No. You see, we are talking about two different things. You are talking about user experience. I'm talking about controls on the architecture.
Yeah.
Because as a macroeconomist, I'm worried more about the architecture than user experience. I'm happy using Wave, don't get me wrong. But I'm looking at the net effect of Wave and the way it is spiraling in the country, it has an adverse effect on savings. It has an adverse effect on borrowing from banks because deposits are reduced. When deposits go down, private businesses get less money through loans. My take is WAVE should be in Gambia. We should encourage it. But in as much as we have to encourage it, we should make sure that WAVE go through a system. What is this system? The system is very simple. Let people put monies in banks and go through WAVE. Now, I can send WAVE from Gambia to Senegal, but vice versa, I cannot do it. I can send you money sitting in the US to WAVE. Now, instead of WAVE bringing in those dollars to Gambia, they are finalizing their transactions sent by Saihou and yourself through the transactions that me and the next and the other Gambians are doing. So the foreign exchange, and that's why also we're having an issue of foreign exchange. The remittances that used to come will no longer all of it come, because now I can leave my dollars sitting at an offshore account and I sell it locally, in the sense that a rice importer needs $4 million. I have $4 million, we agreed. I transfer it to an account of his choice. Is that good for the Gambian economy? I don't think so, because there's less dollars in circulation, less pounds in circulation, less euros in circulation. WAVE must stay, but government needs to rationalize the way WAVE interacts with the economy to ensure that the advent of WAVE will not be the detriment of commercial banks in the medium to long term.
Yeah, just maybe just one final follow-up, because that's one of the reasons why I did raise that question, because we know the foreign economy plays a huge role in ensuring that our deficiency when it comes to the international currencies, helps Gambia when it comes to buying and selling. So now we are not going to have that, because if you have WAVE, you don't need to buy and sell the foreign currency anymore. So whatever we are transacting with WAVE, we are only buying. We are not selling.
Actually, we have made it easy for WAVE to repatriate its profits out of Gambia, because once they make monies in the US and UK, they withhold it offshore. They do all their settlements locally with the float within the system.
Within the system, like within the
gap. Those dollars and pounds will never get into the country. And this is my issue. And better late than never. And if I know this, the average technician at the central bank knows better. So sometimes I wonder. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, so number one issue, and then number two, there was a time also we managed around. I went to the ports, and I've seen WAVE agents actually at the ports selling port tickets with your WAVE account. So that is also for me, it's a concern, because if you would have to go all the way to the ports now, you don't even go and buy the tickets valuably with the Gambian dollars, but young with the WAVE. So it also means for them lose value when it comes to the buying and investing in our own companies. So the business gradually dominate these public and government institutions when it comes to buying and and accessing public services.
On that side is good, because they're trying to take the physical transaction from the staff of the port, because WAVE has trails. At the end of the day, ports will know how many tickets were sold, and there will be a reconciliation on a weekly basis or whatever that's agreed on their contract with ports. I don't have an issue with that, because basically they just now a collection point, and that collection point is more efficient and more transparent than me giving cash to someone at the ferries. And at the end of the day, they reconcile quicker, because imagine at the end of a shift, I have $12 million to count. Now at the end of the shift, I have $0 to count, but I have reconciled my accounts in real time. So that's efficiency. I like that aspect of it. What I don't like is me and you, the wider audience or the wider population, having to use Wave and bypassing commercial banks, and commercial banks are lending outlets and they only lend based on deposits that they have. Now, deposits will naturally go down because there are alternate avenues to store money, and is a Wave wallet, an ASP wallet. For me, government should ensure that Wave exists, but it exists under certain parameters that puts our economy first before the company. Mind you, Wave technology is a new technology to Gambia. And before Gambia create rules for Wave, they need to go to countries that are using this. In Senegal, Orange Money is big, but Orange is locally owned. So repatriation of profits are not that serious relative to foreign investors who only invested on a platform and repatriate funds. And now you have even created a nice way of them repatriating funds by withholding offshore transactions and settling them locally with local transactions.
But Nyang, this is what and where does the central bank come into this? Because
they are the regulators.
They are the regulator. That's what I was trying to say. They are the regulators, and exactly. So the central bank pretty much should not be a bystander in this, and they should look at this and weigh in. And this is why I said earlier, because okay, we were talking, we were analyzing it from different angles to give it a bigger, from different perspectives. You were looking at in terms of the how the economy is losing out, but we were looking at how, to every layman, you want to go through the easy way. So this is where the regulators should come in to make sure that things are addressed in a diligent way, so that they don't.
If you go to Westfield today, Saihou, the Fullers, the reason why the dollar rate is creeping slowly, the dollars in circulation in country physically are less and less because people are making electronic transactions. So now I want to come to the US next week. I need $4,000 to take along. It may take me a little while to get it. And in the past, one Fuller guy can sell me $10,000.
Yeah.
So this also is adding pressure to the rate because money in circulation physically is less because of the wave phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody's asking why we can use.
I wonder whether that Fuller man should even be allowed to continue to sell.
That's another category.
That's another issue. Yeah.
What I'm saying here
is it's a black market.
Availability of physical dollars as before is not the same, and that has a negative impact on the rates.
Yeah. Pressure on the dollar, say.
That's the role of the central bank to regulate.
Mike, can we allow Bubakar and Oz to also ask questions, and then we'll, before we call it, because otherwise we're going to exhaust the 6 questions. You already asked 2. So Bubakar, can you unmute your mic? You have a question?
Yeah, I mean, congrats, man. The conversation has been great. I mean, a lot of elaborating issues, knowledge taking every days. My question is, and my concern is, the state-owned enterprises, the manner in which our government kind of privatize them. I know sometimes when things are not okay, the government can privatize some things. I can understand that, but for the Gambia, the way they do it, and the kind of percentage they get after that, how do you think that is impacting our government as well, or does that have any impact on our government as well? Because you look at the Mama Tenda, Yili Tenda, the kind of cash we do get from there before and now is far different. So, and also you look at the Gamcell also is gone, and you have the Eco Bank, Port Authority as well. So do you think these things have also impacted our economy as well?
I am a student of free enterprise, free market. I believe government has more business in the space of business, but government has a responsibility to be in business. Look at telecom. In the 60s, we had cable and wireless. 70s, Gamtel. Gamtel had a raison d'etre to exist because it was a natural monopoly due to the level of technology at that time. In the late 90s, technology started changing and GSMs came in. Gumtel should have been sold early 2000s and get out of the business and keep Gumtel. You sell Gumcell then and keep Gumtel. Why? Because at that time, international traffic was channeled through the Abuko Art Station, so still it was a public service. So there was a reason for the existence of Gumtel. Now, we all know that private companies do better than public enterprises, and that's why Gumcell faltered over the years as a GSM company. From the first GSM company in Gambia to the worst GSM company today. And that's the reason why government has no business in the environment of business, but should create an environment for private sector to thrive. Today, if I were given an opportunity to have a say, I will sell NAWEC for $1. $1. Why?
I second you.
Why? There is nothing to sell. The machines are dilapidated, the infrastructure needs work, the place is bloated. So you bring in a private sector guy, he buys it for $1 because the role of government is to ensure services are provided. So if private sector wants to fit in and do it, you allow them. And now this is how NAWEC would be restructured. NAWEC will only keep, because power, the business of power is divided into generation, transmission and distribution, and billing. NAWEC will keep the billing aspect of it because every power generating company cannot erect their transmission line. So it's a shared line. Since it's a shared line, the public continues to manage it. That's the high tension and transmission. Then the generating companies, you can invite 40 generating companies into Gambia if they so choose to. They generate company, NAWEC improves the distribution lines, and NAWEC does the billing, collect money from me, and pay the IPPs. So token, I will sell NAWEC for $1 and liberalize the economy. Likewise, river transport. The mistake government made was to allow the Turkish to own their own landing sites. The landing sites should have been treated like an airport. Today, SN Brussels is coming, Royal Air Maroc is coming, Air Portugal is coming. They're all coming to an airport owned by the public. Therefore, river transport equally, government should have kept the infrastructure and allowed operators to come in with their equipment and use our sites. If you go to any rail station in England, you will see different rail companies, but the physical infrastructure, i.e. station, is owned by the public. That model is internationally known, and it baffles me why Gambia cannot understand what service delivery is and what hard infrastructure is. Thank you.
Yeah, Boubacar, thank you for that question. I think this is a question of privatization versus nationalization. It's a topical issue. Some people are big fan of privatization. You want to privatize certain because people believe that naturally, like private sector is more in terms of efficiency. Normally, is with the privately owned businesses. But at the same time, some people will argue that there are certain national institutions that need to be under the radar of the state. So this is about nationalization versus privatization completely. I think we could have a mixture of the two and track a fine line on it. And I particularly think that, for example, during the PPP administration, we used to have personal performance contracts. These parastatals are charged on performance contract basis. Performance, like you have to deliver, and they are tasked to give something in return to the state. Which, when we lost sight of those performance contracts, now that lead to the poor performance of these SOEs because the performance contract was gone. And what the government, when you look at the case of Gumtel, because these institutions are not performing well, naturally the government is cash strapped and they end up doing the obvious thing, or let's go into private ownership. And you spoke about the Senegambia bridge, when the government actually got involved in is it Africa? What is the name of this institution? They sold this for what?
Africa 50.
Africa 50, exactly. So I think this is the thing. I would want us to bring back the issue of performance contracts. I think that's very, very important. When Gamtel had this performance contract, they were doing well. Africa 50, yes, they were doing well. Gamtel used to be number 2 in the whole of Africa. I remember the time they were doing pretty well. And you look at some of these parastatals in the Gambia, they're pretty doing well, because that's how you actually task this. And this is not a peculiar to SOEs, but even the whole government setting. Productivity in Gambia, I don't know whether it's measured. I don't know whether, for example, even civil servants have doing productivity. Like, you go to office, what have you done for the day? So in the same way, it's just we need to assess our SOEs in terms of their performance. Once we leave them to do whatever they want, and here you don't give any profit to the government, because these parastatals are supposed to give returns to the state. But once they start running into losses, then naturally the government will look for a bailout to say, and I think that's why they sold our ports to the Turkish, because they feel that those people will improve the turnaround time. I don't know how true that is, because right now they are saying the turnaround time is better under the new system than in the past. People are saying in the past, when even containers used to be at waiting time used to be months before you could even take a good up. They said under the current system is better, but we also saw how the staff, management crisis. We saw protests there and all that. So it's just one of those things. But nationalization is now something that people want to go more. I saw somebody in the comment section. This is more of capitalistic ideas that you guys are propagating. But Gambia's economy is an open trade system. Liberal trade system. Economy is open. We don't have like the Chinese model where ours is more of an open economy system where we allow the free market system, prices to be determined by the forces of demand and supply, and the government should have limited interference in the economy. We allow the private sector to probably do its business in terms of the economy. So for me, I think we just have to find that balance between nationalization and privatization. We had it in the UK when Margaret Thatcher brought all this issue of privatization. National Railway and all the things got privatized. So it had a backlash in the UK. But right now, the Gambia is moving towards that trend when they are just trying to privatize most of these national institutions. And some people are not happy about it.
I think people will have different views, but I am not entirely against privatization when it comes to.
Yeah, it's good. Privatization is good if it is properly managed. Yeah.
Particularly NAWEC and I'm not entirely against Senegambia breaking the arrangement, because if the money taken is used efficiently, I'm not entirely against it, but I can see the pros and cons.
Yeah, both sides have got pros and cons, Yeah. Yeah.
What everybody owns, nobody controls.
Yeah.
And in America, back in the day, the Panams were owned by the state. The Bell companies, that's the phone companies, owned by the state. And the state realized that privatization opened up. And that's why they end up having what you call baby bells. Then other companies spun off out of it. And guess what? Innovation, technology, and others took a quantum leap. So basically, the role of government is not to be in business.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The more government stays in business, the more inefficient
it becomes.
The environment becomes.
Yeah, it's true.
So the reason why governments are in business, because sometimes there are certain goods, public goods, that is a natural monopoly.
Yeah.
And when it's a natural monopoly, it is controlled by government. At one point, electricity was a natural monopoly. And later models were developed where generation can be privatized, where billing can stay with government, and distribution. So we have reached a stage in development whereby whenever government can offload a duty that is carrying to the private sector to provide, it's best the private sector does it, because the private sector is out to make profits, so their cost structure is something they will seriously look into and manage. If you look at Gamtel, the reason why Gamtel was highly profitable, we had a gateway. The technology at the time, international calls were the only way to talk outside of a country. Telephones, the copper line, the same. Yeah. But technology has reached a stage where the gateway is redundant.
Redundant now with the use of WhatsApp and all that shit. Yeah.
It's maybe the total traffic on WhatsApp.
Yeah, WhatsApp. Yeah.
So the dynamism of the environment that is changing should also make the government to adapt to the changing environment and know that privatization is the way to bring efficiency and good service delivery, whether it's from the public or private. The average citizens just want service delivery.
Yeah, but Nyang, before another person comes in, I just want us to go down the memory lane with the situation of the MSG situation. Exactly. And that is NAWEC. It was, I don't know whether it was completely privatized or partially privatized, but we had a private sector involvement with the NAWEC, and there was no headway. We had, you see, so it's all down to management. Okay, so that we look at the situation, and this is how, because we did this trial with NAWEC before with the privatization. Maybe there are tons of reasons why it didn't work, but it didn't work. GUC, MSG, and all that.
The company's interest.
Yeah.
And today the ferries, the new port in Nyang is all the same, because that's not a genuine privatization exercise.
Yeah.
It's a transactional exercise that is looking at people's interest before the greater good's interest, both on the investor side and the people transacting the transaction.
Okay, thank you. So, I don't know, Mike and HIRI.
So one more question? Oh, just one more question.
Okay.
At least. Pose.
Yes.
Let's keep it short and brief. Yeah.
Thank you. I think usually they say you save the best for the last. But I just want to commend you two panelists who have, extensively touched on the economy and all the other sectors affecting the Gambia. Obviously, Nyang has been in the system for long, and Saihou too. You can tell with their deliberations. But just where you stopped, where you put on the dot, Nyang, I just wanted to touch your brain on that regarding privatization, because one of the fear that people usually face regarding privatization, especially when it comes to basic essentials, the fear is that, don't you think it would have make it more difficult for ordinary citizens to be able to benefit or even afford those essentials if it is strictly privatized? What is your take on that before I go further? Any of you could.
The role of government is to provide public services. And public services can be schools, hospitals, roads, provision of ID cards, etc., etc. Fine. But the world is evolving, and as the world evolved, Lester Thorough spoke about outsourcing. Today, government should outsource some services to people who can give it to the average Gambian at the least cost on a sustainable basis. So for me, privatization is the way out, so that government focus on its core mandate, giving us security, giving us education, and giving us health. But services like telecom, government should not even think of it in today's world, considering where technology is. You see, we are holding on to things and we don't want to let go because we are used to holding on to them. The days that cable and wireless had to be in telecom and Gamtel had to be in telecom are not the very days we are living in today. Therefore, there has to be a rethink and a relook, and we need to reposition government to do what its primary core mandate is: securing us, educating us, giving us opportunities, and also healing us when we're sick. That's the core mandate of government. With regards to service delivery.
Okay, so let's say, for example, today, NAWEC, even the cost that has been levied against ordinary people, it's difficult to afford. And let's say NAWEC is now strictly privatized. what would you say would be the effect on an impact for an individual who is struggling under the current situation, and how does government alleviate between that privately owned run agency and that individual who is a beneficiary to this?
Government and NAWEC are losing money today because of inefficiency born out of corruption and also transmission and distribution losses. Old machines and bad high tension cables. Electricity cannot be stored. So once you put it in, if I don't use it, boom, it's gone. So that becomes a loss. So NAWEC today, when they're selling power to us, they're selling power X plus a factor of the transmission losses. Meaning, if the generation cost per kilowatt is $100, including their margin to make money, but they're losing $20, they put 100 plus 20. But the private sector guy will want to reduce their losses because they don't have that absorption capacity to make losses. They're in business to make profits. So you will end up getting cheaper electricity in the medium term. Today, if you privatize now, it will be expensive, then cheap, then affordable. Why? Because they have to invest in the system to have efficient transmission. With efficient transmission, I benefit. And that's where privatization gets in. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit on this whole issue of privatization. I know I can see that Nyang is a big fan of privatization, and it can work. And he's right to say the government's role is to provide conducive environment and let the private sector does its work. But if you privatize a sector, what you are aiming at is naturally to bring more efficiency for the consumer, because the key here is the consumer. The consumer should be the interest of the consumer. Consumer needs to be protected, and the consumer and Gambia. I don't think we have got. I don't know whether we have it. Like we have it in the West here, where consumers are well looked after. If the companies wants to bring up policies where consumers will be probably they are not benefiting out, or they are cheated or anything in the pricing, competitive pricing, and they look at it like here in the UK you have got Ofcom and Ofgem who are primarily there to look at the consumer to show that these big companies don't take advantage over the consumer. Okay. We have consumer protection. Consumer protection. Consumer commission. But is how this consumer commission does its work. How they do. Do they put penalties on these companies? Like here, companies are fined, huge fines in the UK, where they feel.
You have to understand, Saihou, in the Gambia, we have good laws and bad.
Exactly. So we have all these laws, all these fanciful laws, but we are not. So for me, it's good to privatize, but at the same time, the government should have its eye on this, how this will be beneficial to the Gambian consumer in terms of affordability. That's one, and also in terms of supply. Because otherwise, like I said, we had a scenario where this sector was privatized, but it was completely meaningless for the Gambians. So we should go into privatization, but to make sure it's more beneficial to the consumer. And I think the interest of the consumer is what we should be looking at here. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
All right. I think we can take one from James, and that will be. James, are you there?
Yeah, okay.
Just one question.
Sorry,
James is our potential technical director. So we gotta let him say something, guys. Thank you so much again, Njie.
And I think firstly just to thank Mr. Njie and Mr. Saidily for showing up and taking their time to talk to the Gambian people. They have a wealth of knowledge. They have experience and expertise in this area, and it was an interesting talk. Right? It was very good to listen to. So I just want to touch on. So I just have one question and a comment. So the question is regarding we talked about trade and how we don't really export and so on, but in around 2010 or 2011, Gambia, we had the Gambia Standards Bureau that was established as an act of parliament, I believe. And it was meant to combat these technical barriers to trade, right? So they were supposed to set, help a lot of the enterprises with standardization, with packaging, with meeting international requirements, with meeting ISO level certifications, so forth and so on and so forth. But this is one of the most heavily underfunded institutions in the country. Its line ministry is, I think, the Ministry of Trade, but it's so bad that in 2017 or 2018, when Dr. Aissatou was the Minister of Trade, she didn't even know that the bureau existed, and it was under her ministry, right? They had to pay a courtesy call and try to, talk about what they do and how they can actually help. And if you look at the mandate of the Standards Bureau, it's actually meant to solve all of these things. So on paper, we have everything that we need to actually move the country forward. But why do you guys think that in reality that's not happening? Because Standards Bureau is heavily underfunded, and they have people that are trained as ISO auditors. They can help companies and businesses, whether it is farming or whatever kind of business, to actually get their produce or the products to the level that it can be exported. Like that's the whole. That's why they're there. Right, and they work with FSQA as well to help people that are in the food industry. But again, heavily underfunded, heavily underutilized, and they can, if used well, they can solve most of these problems that we are facing.
Okay.
Yes, if Gambians go to meetings and certain things are required of the country, and they're willing to fulfill without being committed to it, you end up getting exactly what's happening to the Standards Bureau. Most times we go to conventions and we ratify things and we are required to do A, B, C, D, and E. The commitment is not there. And if the commitment is there, the resources follow. And the reason why these places are under-resourced, we are not committed to them, but we were obliged to set them up to be seen as being compliant. And in most instances, that's what's happening. And like you said, the Standard Bureau is probably one of the most important offices in the Gambia. It's not only underfunded, but it's not brought to the spotlight for Gambians to utilize it efficiently and effectively because the government don't even believe in it. This is the problem.
Yeah, I think, Gings, you yourself have pretty much answered the question for yourself. And in fact, it was, I worked at the Ministry of Trade, and Standards Bureau is under the purview of the Ministry of Trade. And if you go to their offices, then you know the reality of, we have just an institution by name, but they were not empowered with what they should. And that's where the issue of funding comes in. And if you look at the whole Ministry of Trade, what is the budgetary allocation to the Ministry of Trade? Where Ministry of Finance get lion's share of the budget because they are the ones that do the budgetary allocation. You look at Ministry of Trade, we get, I remember when we were there, we had to go through a lot of negotiations that we need to begin because we have so many departments under the Ministry of Trade, like the Office of the Standards Bureau is there. IBAS was under the Ministry of Trade. So these institutions are underfunded and they cannot, obviously, that's why they are not able to do it. It's embarrassing for a whole minister not to even know, Dr. Aissatou, you referenced that, not knowing that Standards Bureau is under our ministry. And that shows the lack of seriousness that we are taking these institutions that are supposedly supposed to be the most valued institutions, because you talk of, these are the institutions in terms of international compliance, the standardization, for us to be able to break through in the international market. And these are some of the problems that we have. We mentioned about the technical barriers to trade earlier in the discussion, and these are some of the issues. So we need, it brings back us everything that we said in this program. Governance.
Can I take leave of you guys? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have somewhere to go. Thanks.
Yeah,
okay.
So that was the last question. Again, Mr. Njie, thank you so much for coming.
All right, cheers.
Thank you so much for engaging and teaching us. We'll see you back again on media next time.
Okay. So thank you guys, and I can let you guys have your conversation now, right?
All right, so thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. You guys are very educated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mike,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, so
can I just say?